everyone, Samia Khan here with your FOX10 News Now update. Hope you're having a lovely Tuesday morning. I'm having a lovely Tuesday morning because it is National Coffee Day, meaning I'm heavily caffeinated because I like to celebrate holidays. I think it's really important that we acknowledge all holidays, including the great ones like National Coffee Day. So if you live near a Dunkin' Donuts or Krispy Kreme, both of those places are giving away free coffee. I think a couple other places are offering some coffee deals as well, so I encourage you to go out and celebrate this national holiday. In the meantime, we have a lot of news ahead. We are just checking to see if we can stream a couple of live events happening right now here in the Valley. In the meantime, we're getting some live event feeds in as well. In fact, this is a Planned Parenthood hearing that is currently underway. We're going to listen to this for a little bit, and then we are going to be joined by the one and only Ron Hoon, because he makes all conversations just 10 times better. So let's go ahead and listen to this Planned Parenthood hearing, because you know it's very controversial and a very hot topic.
Affiliate sent that deletion of the word compensation. Did Mr. Deladian agree to the terms, or did he lose interest?
There was never a contract, that I know of that was actually sent back.
Let me ask another question about a failed attempt by Mr. Deladian. On July 20, you sent a letter to Chairman Upton. You said this, quote, "In another instance, Biomax offered to pay much more, sending the affiliate a procurement agreement that offered a payment of $1,600. Your letter says this was a, quote, astronomical amount compared to the reasonable cost affiliates are allowed to recoup under federal law. Is that right?"
I don't have that in front of me, but it sounds, to the best of my knowledge, it's correct.
All right. I see that I'm out of time, and I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll now recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Walker, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Richards, for being here today. I appreciate your testimony. I am also married to a strong lady. She is a family nurse practitioner. Helped launch the sexual assault nurse examiner program at Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center many years ago. But we stand together. We have done work in our inner cities and places like Cleveland and Baltimore and New York. And I'm troubled with some of the statistics that we've even seen out of New York. And maybe you can address that. I want to talk over you. I want to give you a chance to respond. But according to New York Health Department statistics, we now know that there are more African-American babies that are aborted in New York than actually born alive. Are you aware of that statistic?
I'm not aware of that statistic.
Okay. If that is correct, would that concern you? Because obviously Planned Parenthood has more clinics in New York State than any other state.
Actually, that's not true. We do not.
What is the #1 leading state that you have?
I believe it's California. I'll have to look, though, to make sure.
But if you know that's not true.
And it's not only, I mean, Planned Parenthood, there are a number of healthcare providers in the state of New York beyond Planned Parenthood. It's one of the better served.
I understand, but we've already established that somewhere between 30 and 40% of all abortions come from your organization. So if we're going to put out the stats, we want to make sure that we're talking correct on the numbers.
And I do think, Mr. Walker, it's a really important point, because I think one of the other, I'm not what all the statistics are that you have, but of course the lack of access for African American women in particular to basic preventive health care, including family planning, is a huge problem in this country.
It is, and I don't want to spend, and I agree with you, that's as a aforementioned time of places that we've served and worked in, but it does concern me that 3 times the African American population is 13%, yet they're being aborted 3 times % of the population at 35%. That should concern all of us. I'm sure it concerns you as well. I do have a specific question regarding the $32 million that's sent overseas. Does Planned Parenthood send any funds to the Democratic Republic of Congo?
You know, this was asked earlier, and
we did touch on it, but I want to come back to it.
I have to get back. Honestly, I didn't bring materials about our international global program. I would have to get back to you that. I'm not trying to evade it. It's just not something that I thought was a topic of the committee meeting.
Well, I hope you would, because we have laws in this country that permit or prohibit us from sending money to places where we have sanctions on, and if Planned Parenthood is doing that, I would imagine that would be something that would concern you, would it not?
We certainly comply with all the laws, both globally and domestically, and that's why I commit to you. I will get information. We'll work with the committee to get information about the Congo.
Fair enough. I have a question. As a former pastor, 15 years in a couple large churches, there are many times where we counseled women at different ages, various ages, for different things that we're going through. Sometimes 15, 20, 25 years later, after going through an abortion, there was still some struggle there. I don't disparage these women for making tough choices. As you've talked about, many have come from underprivileged communities, didn't even feel like they had options. But of the $500 million of the taxpayers' money that goes to your organization, how much of that is set aside to offer counseling to some of those women who are still struggling with that issue?
Well, we don't, this is what it's really hard to explain to you, because I feel like we're talking past each other. We don't get a big check from the federal government. We're reimbursed for direct services, but they're all family planning, STD testing, women visit. I will say though, where one area I think you and I might agree, I would love in this country if we would fully fund, for Planned Parenthood or anywhere else, comprehensive counseling services for women on a whole host of issues. It is very underfunded, and it is really important to us as well, because we do counseling with women every single day.
I understand that, and I agree that there are some legitimate services offered, but this is something that I saw for 15 years. So of the $1.3 billion in revenue, even if it doesn't come from taxpayers, how much of that is set aside to offer these services of women who are seeking counseling?
We counsel, I don't know how, I could get the numbers for you. We counsel women and young people and men every single day at Planned Parenthood health centers all across the country, and most of it, as you probably know, is uncompensated care.
Well, I look at your numbers, and I would tell you this, it is amazing as far as the amount of revenue that exists, and that's why I wanted to talk a little bit about how much you're sending overseas. But I do have one final question. This is a big if there is proven to be criminal activity through an investigation, would you have any problem redirecting the $500 million or the $60 million of the 20% that's not Medicaid? Would you have any problem redirecting that to other women's health care organizations who are offering genuine health care?
Well, I'm not going to answer to a hypothetical, and again, we follow all the laws at Planned Parenthood. The health and safety of our patients is our #1 concern. If there is any issue ever, the state or local, national level, we will address it, and we do so swiftly, and we always have.
Thank you, Ms. Richards. I'll yield back.
Thank you. Now I'll recognize the gentlewoman from the Virgin Islands, Ms. Plaskett, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Ranking Member Mr. Cummings. Thank you, Ms. Richards, for being here for the inordinate amount of time that you have. And I reiterate so much of what my colleagues here on this side of the aisle have said regarding this hearing and some of the concerns. You and your office know that I vocalized to you privately the fact that I'm displeased that Planned Parenthood is not present in my own district in the Virgin Islands or in any of the territories which have approximately 4 million people. And the reason I'm displeased about that is because I know the good work that Planned Parenthood does in preventative health for its women, with the Virgin Islands having 141 unplanned teen pregnancies per 1,000 when the national rate is 29 pregnancies per 1,000. I see how important the work that you guys do is to different areas. And, you know, the chairman has 7 clinics in his area in Utah. And, Mr. Chairman, we'd be glad to take any one of them in the Virgin Islands to be able to support women's health and the work that you do, knowing that 78% of those 7 clinics are in rural areas. And I know that this committee is searching for truth. And that's the purpose of the Oversight and Government Reform Committee. And I believe that we need to do that in a neutral and even-handed manner that reflects the integrity of this committee, which is why I think that this is a premature committee hearing, if not the fact that the other side, the individual that the minority has requested to be here, Mr. Daliaden, is not here. And while I understand that Mr. Daliaden has had restrictions on the videos being produced, he has not produced one document that has been requested by this committee from either side. Ms. Richards, do you know how many documents, how many pages of documents Planned Parenthood has produced for this committee?
Will the gentlewoman yield?
No, not at this time, sir. Afterwards, I will leave you some time.
Well, I know thousands and thousands of pages of documents.
I think it's 20,000 pages. And I know that the Ranking Member Cummings has sent a request for documents, and the Chairman, Chaffetz, and Representative Jordan have sent their own request for documents, and a subpoena was issued, and it has not. Not one page of documents, although I understand that from the testimony that the videos were, in fact, there was a question regarding that. And so, Ms. Richards, I want to ask you some questions since we only have Planned Parenthood here, and we only have your documents that we're able to put up and put up on screens and for you to be questioned about, not the other side, which as an attorney is a little problematic for me to be able to get to the truth if I don't see both sides of the evidence being presented to me. I understand that there are several states that have launched investigations against Planned Parenthood. Is that correct?
Well, there have been a variety of, I mean, we're constantly being overseeing our healthcare services. And yes, I think as a result of this recent campaign, there have been various state
And I understand
inquiries.
that several of those states have cleared Planned Parenthood of any wrongdoing.
That's correct. That's correct.
And that there has not been produced any credible evidence that your organization has broken a single law. Is that correct?
I believe that's true.
And however, there's plenty of evidence that Mr. Daladan and his associates have violated both federal and state laws. One example is his group obtaining tax-exempt status and apparently solicited charitable contributions under false pretense. Ms. Richards, are you aware that the Center for Medical Progress obtained a 501c3 status, as I quote, a biomedicine or bioengineering organization?
Well, all I know is what I've read in the paper about the organization.
And that, in fact, is a fake organization that filed official paperwork with the state of California to create a sham tissue procurement company called Biomax Procurement Services, LLC. Ms. Richards, as far as I know, illegally filing false paperwork with a state agency it's illegal and against the law, right?
It may be, I don't know, and I know there's a lawsuit now pending, and I think the Attorney General of California has indicated that there will be an investigation.
And so for me, for us to have this discussion with you without having the balance of the other side becomes problematic. Mr. Chairman, did you want to say something at this point?
Yes, I thank the gentlewoman for yielding that she made a suggestion that Mr. Daladan had not been responsive to our inquiries. That's not true. We issued a subpoena, responded within the time. That package that arrived has not been opened. It's in our safe. He's unable to provide all of the documents given that there is a temporary restraining order. We understand that. House counsel's involved. Mr. Cummings and I evidently agree on this point that we're trying to get all of that information. But to suggest that he was non-responsive is simply not true because he did respond within the time allocated under the subpoena.
Well, it's my position, Mr. Chairman, that until you're able to open all of those documents and receive all of them, and we're able to balance them against the documents, the 20,000 pages of documents produced by Planned Parenthood, that this is an unfair hearing and that we're not getting a balance and able to do that.
I agree that we need all the information. That's why Mr. Daladan was not invited to this hearing. The subject is exactly what I said in my opening comments and statements, of which many members have inquired about. It's the funding component. We did not title this hearing as a hearing on the videos. It caused some controversy, but we have, in the essence of time, some legitimate discussion about a continuing resolution and ongoing funding for Planned Parenthood, and we've laid that out. But my comments were not about the video, it was about the funding. That's where my concern lies.
Mr.
And
Chairman,
we will get to hopefully see all of those videos, but we've got to get past the restraining order that has been put in place by a judge in California.
Mr. Chairman, if we're going to discuss funding and knowing that members of Congress can sit here and ask questions that run the gamut, and that funding question is related to those videos, which are the genesis of the question of whether to defund, then I think it's a little naive of us to think that that discussion can be done in a vacuum without the videos and the other documents from the other side.
The
I
gentleman
think that
will
my
yield.
time is up.
Would the gentleman yield with the,
Sure,
with
go
the
ahead.
chairman's indulgence? In fairness to the gentlelady, I'm looking at the memorandum from the majority, and it talks about background for this hearing. And the first sentence on the background says, recently released videos demonstrate Planned Parenthood Federation of America participates in transactions involving transferring fetal tissue for remuneration. And then it goes on. But let me just very briefly, so that the record is clear. The gentlelady referred to documents that we had not received, and Again, I'd like to briefly clarify one point on the record because it is important for the committee members to understand, and I'll be very brief. On Friday afternoon, the Republican staff informed Democratic staff that Mr. Daleiden sent them a package, a FedEx box, but they said that they did not want to open it until this week. We thought this was strange because if the Republicans delayed opening this package, members would not have had enough time to review whatever was inside before today's hearing. So our staff also made it clear that if the Republicans wanted to use any of this material at today's hearing, it should be open immediately on Friday, so we could begin to reviewing it as soon as possible through the weekend. But the Republican staff told us that they wanted to just keep the box closed. They said they would not open it and they would not use it at the hearing. So, as of this moment, we still do not know for sure what is inside that box from Mr. Daleiden. However, we did receive a copy of minutes from a recent hearing in a lawsuit in California where Mr. Daleiden's attorneys apparently told the court in that case that they delivered additional video footage to our committee, so even more footage that Mr. Daleiden cut from the videos he's released publicly. So we want to open the package. We want members to have equal access to the videos that are apparently inside, and we definitely want to see what the other footage Mr. Daleiden was concealing from the public. And I'll yield back.
Yeah, I want to see all the videos too. That's why we issued a subpoena. I wish you all had supported us when we issued it.
Again, Mr. Chairman, I've said it before, and I don't want to.
I'm glad to have your support now.
I don't want to belabor
glad to
it.
have
No,
your
it's
support
not now. We've supported, and I can show you the documents to show you that we have asked that we get all of the tapes. And I will certainly, if you give me a few minutes while others are asking questions, I'll give you the very documents that we sent you showing that. Okay.
All right, we're going to go now to the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Mulvaney, for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman, and I'll try and make my Democrat colleagues happy and ask funding questions that have nothing to do with the videos. How about that? Which is more important to you, Ms. Richards, actually providing women's health care services or lobbying?
Well, I think these two things go hand in hand, and certainly what we have learned over the years is that in order to be able to provide health care services to women, you have to also be able to advocate, particularly for women who are underserved. So I think the two things actually go hand in hand.
Fair enough. You spent $21 million on lobbying in the last couple of years. You spent $0 on mammograms. Why is that?
Well, I think we've discussed mammograms repeatedly and how women's health care works. So when I go to my doctor, I get a breast exam.
You do a referral, I get that. Why don't you do them?
We refer to
Why don't you do them?
Well, we're not a radiological clinic, and I actually don't think that's an...
Why not? That's a woman's service.
Well, I guess we could take it up, but we never have provided mammograms because we work in concert with folks who do provide radiological services. We do a number of breast exams.
You're aware, by the way, there's people running for president saying that you do provide mammograms, and that's not accurate, is it?
Well, there are a number of people running for president saying a lot of things that
on that
side. I can't certainly...
You said earlier that you don't make any money from federal funds, right? You don't make any profit off the federal funds. Is that correct?
So Planned Parenthood is a national office. We have one source of federal funding right now. It's a $21,000 roughly grant for a birth control clinical trial where we're actually reimbursed for costs alone, and that's the only source of federal resources that come to the national office. So we couldn't make a profit off that.
Where's the $532 million going?
So Medicaid and Title X.
So when you said you don't make any money off the federal funds, you were talking about the parent, not about your operations.
I was trying to explain that the national office, and then we have 59 affiliates. We have 650 to 700 health centers that provide health care services.
Is it your testimony that none of those make any profit off of federal funds?
Well, I would have to, they're all reimbursed for services that they provide, and my experience has been,
right?
Excuse me?
That provides a profit. You get reimbursed for services.
Well, we're a nonprofit, so that's...
You're a nonprofit that made $127 million last year.
We didn't make money. We don't make money. We actually reinvest money in healthcare services and education and
so good.
a lot of other things.
Let's talk about that.
I wanted to answer
I want to follow up on that question. Now let's go on to this one. You just mentioned that you don't make money, but you had revenues in excess of your expenses of $127 million last year. That's right. That's your testimony.
We
It's your
raised-
numbers. Right. So here's my question. I'm going to get to the question if you let me. Where does the money go? Where does that $127 million go?
So like any organization of our size and scale, a lot of our resources are in what is a board-designated endowment or reserve. We are a 99-year-old organization, and so we've built our endowment. But also, I'm investing.
So you retain those earnings. In the private sense, you would retain those, or you put them in the bank.
Well, I hope they're in the bank and not just laying around, but I certainly, in addition to that, so some are in reserves, and the other is I've just invested in expanding healthcare services and building new clinics in a variety of states across the country.
How is
That's
that not an
paid
expense?
for. Excuse me?
How is that not an expense?
Well, it is an expense.
No, but your books reflect revenues in excess of expenses of $127
Well,
million.
I'm sorry, they're not all out the door, but I've made commitments to opening up new health centers in New Orleans, in Dallas, in other states in the South, we're opening in other states that I won't mention here probably because it would just cause more attention.
Services. Okay, so let's say that money goes towards expanding their service. One of the proposals here, Ms. Richards, is to defund Planned Parenthood, which includes taking $60 million, roughly $60 million away from what you get out of discretionary funding. If we took $60 million away from you could still perform every single service that you gave last year, can't you?
I can't say that because those.
Well, you made 120. You said you have revenues in excess of expenses of 127 million. Now you told me what you do with 127 million. You're spending it. You're investing it. You're expanding. I get that. But if you'd had $60 million less last year, you could have provided every single service to every single woman that you did last year.
Well, I constantly raise money to expand services to the patients that look to us, and so.
And God bless
I
you.
don't.
And I think that's great. But answer my question, please. You could have provided every single service that you did to every single woman last year if you did not get a penny from the discretionary fund from the United States Congress.
Well, I actually disagree, and there's no way I could agree to that. These are services that are spread out all across the country, and I can't possibly account for how each dollar that I raise, some of which is committed to other services and expansion of services, could simply replace federal dollars.
Not expansions of service. I'm talking about services you actually provided. You would have had $67 million.
Well, we're expanding services beyond what we already provide.
Got that. Not my question. My question is, if we had not funded you last year, you still would have been able to provide the services. And I think the answer is unequivocally yes. You might not have been able to expand your services, but every single woman that walked into every single clinic would have been served if you had not received that money from Congress. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I disagree, but.
And we're just trying to figure out why you would disagree with that. Revenues would still exceed expenses, even with $60 million less.
So do you want me to start talking? Are we now having this conversation? I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if we're finishing this.
Sure.
So I raise money every single day to expand services and education services to people in America. That's what we do at Planned Parenthood. And like any other nonprofit, we reserve money for all kinds of services that need to be expanded, assistance that needs to be provided, and that's what we do with our money. We're a nonprofit. We don't do anything else with our money other than put it back into the services, the education, and sometimes the advocacy that we provide.
We'll now recognize the gentlewoman from New Mexico, Ms. Lujan Grisham, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Richards. And if this committee is going to undertake how Medicaid money is used and not used by every health care provider in every state and every local government in the United States, it might be a very interesting hearing about how we can assure that the Medicaid funds that are not reaching so many still, even with the progress of the Affordable Care Act, so many women and so many families, that would be a hearing that I think would be well worth having. I'm going to go back to both the funding aspects here, the unintended consequences, and really I appreciate the comments of all of my colleagues, but Mr. Welch and Mr. Boyle. I served as the New Mexico Secretary of Health, and one of my challenges was certainly to deal with teen pregnancy, but also to make sure that we had the right partnerships and viable access in a public health system where women and their families could get access to health care services that were of high quality and services that they trust. I can tell you something you already know, that without Planned Parenthood, we could not meet those access points. And quite frankly, even in the public health system, there are many women, particularly in rural and frontier areas of the state, who A, did not have access or would absolutely under no circumstances choose that access, where I'd like to tell you that our record about prevention and preventing pregnancy was better in the public health system. And that was in a world where we didn't have the 2008 budget issues, where our state now is not putting money into public health or expanding public health or working on women's health care. And without the Affordable Care Act, our rural hospitals and community health centers would all but be closed. And I will tell you that we now have the highest teen pregnancy rate in the country, with efforts at looking at what we can do for 15-year-olds to prevent the second and third pregnancy. Women need and deserve unfettered, high-quality, confidential access to comprehensive health services. And I'm hearing from hundreds of constituents, and I also know that thousands of New Mexico women and their families will not have access to these services because it is all connected, and even if it wasn't, would still want them to have the choices that they make that are right for them. But with all of the funding issues that we debate in this Congress, I know unequivocally that they don't have access in many of the places that they should. And under the Equal Protection Clause, they certainly ought to with Medicaid funding. Can you talk a little bit more about what states like New Mexico, with these high teen pregnancy rates, without public health access, without those rural access points, where would those 21,000 women go?
Well, I thank you for your service in the public health arena and for your question. I do think it's incredibly important that we're constantly looking at new ways to help particularly young people access information and services. And it sort of goes back to the chairman's question maybe earlier, which is one of the things we do at Planned Parenthood, in addition to providing Medicaid family planning services and other, is we now run education programs all across the country and through the web that have an average of 6 million visitors every single month, and visited by young people and by their families, English and in Spanish, because many people don't have access to adequate sex education in their communities. In addition, we are looking at more ways to provide birth control through virtually, so that actually you can order it online and don't have to be in a clinic. Because for many rural Americans, it's very difficult to access a family planning provider in your community. So those are the kinds of things.
Not there. I have a pastor in my district who's let me know that he refers women to Planned Parenthood because he knows that there aren't the right community access points. And I know it's been touched on in this committee, but I have personal experience and know many of my constituents in their 20s and 30s and 40s who, without the comprehensive health care services, would have died from cervical cancer. And I know exactly how important, again, in a state that has higher per capita averages in many of these cancer areas for these populations, and particularly for minority populations, that we want to do a much better job investing in comprehensive health, simply do not have it. And the notion that we would continue to discriminate against those populations by not providing adequate federal funding and access makes no sense if what we're trying to do is to maintain my choice about my high-quality confidential provider. Thank you, Ms. Richards, for being here today. I appreciate your testimony.
Thanks for letting me be here. Thank you.
Thank you. We have, members are advised we have 2 votes on the floor. There are approximately 8 minutes left in this first previous question vote. It's the intention of the chair to recognize Mr. Heiss for his 5 minutes of questioning. Then we're going to go to recess. Then we're going to have to come back. We thought we could get through it, but we still have a number of members who have questions. So we'll now recognize Mr. Heiss for 5 minutes. Then we'll go into recess and we'll reconvene after the votes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Richards, just a point of clarification. It's already been established that Planned Parenthood serves a lot of underprivileged people. And I just want to be clear in your testimony, you stated that it is significantly more difficult for individuals on Medicaid to access a provider as opposed to someone with a private insurance, because so many providers now are not accepting Medicaid. Is that correct?
Medicaid patients, it really varies across the country, but
across the
certainly there are some states where it's very difficult.
And that's one reason that you would say that Planned Parenthood is needed, because there's a gap there. Is that correct?
Well, I think I think we have tried to demonstrate that we are an important provider of Medicaid services to a lot of folks in this country.
But particularly the underprivileged and.
Well, that's who, just I guess by definition, yes, that's
all right. So
on Medicaid.
You also said in your testimony that the Government Accountability Office found that about 2/3 of the states are challenged now recruiting OBGYNs because of the difficulty in ensuring provider participation in Medicaid, and that, according to the CBO, this again is in your testimony, that by next year, Obamacare is expected to reduce the uninsured, and nearly half of those are going to be on Medicaid. So from these testimonies or these statements in your testimony, is Medicaid, in your opinion, a substandard insurance?
In my opinion, is it no?
Is it an inferior product?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure how to answer that. I think it's important that Medicaid
Well, this is according to your testimony, and I just want to know.
No, I didn't. I don't think I said that, so I just want to make sure I'm clear what you're asking. I think that it's important that Medicaid patients be able to get the same kind of quality of care as other
But you said
insured
they
people.
can't. They're not able to because so many providers are not. Let's go on to some other things. I was just curious, and those were some questions that I had jotted down. It seems to me that there's a question mark there. You praise it on one end, Medicaid, and then
very important.
Say it's a problem on the other,
no,
and that's why.
It's not, so I hope I didn't misstate that. I don't think Medicaid is a problem. I think the challenge is because the reimbursement rates are very, very low in many states, there are not enough doctors and healthcare providers that will take new Medicaid patients. That's something everyone struggles with.
Let's go further. I do have some other questions. We've also established today that there has been some excess revenue, as you describe it, other than saying profit, excess revenue, nearly $750 million in the last 10 years, 127 million last year. We can break that down in a number of different ways. And yet at the same time, the dramatic reduction in prenatal care, preventive services, cancer screening, and so forth. And do you have any idea, by the way, how many Planned Parenthood clinics have closed over the last 10 years?
I don't have those exact numbers, and you're referring to a lot of things I'd have to go back and look at charts where I think we've addressed, and although I know not everyone is here for all of it, why some women's health care services aren't needed on an annual basis anymore. But many of our Planned Parenthood health centers have merged to be more efficient. We were started 99 years ago, and I will be candid, there's not always total efficiency.
Okay, well, let me go on. There's been over 100 that have closed just over the last.
Or merged, well, I would say, or
closed
merged.
and merged, whatever. But the bottom line is, you stated just a few moments ago that this 127 million, $750 million over the last 10 years, that you're largely holding it and using it for investment purposes. Why is it on the taxpayer's hook to provide for your investments in expansion when you were declining your services and clinics are closing?
I don't think the federal government isn't investing in our expansion. In fact, the federal government,
you've got 127 million over the last year that's excess.
That was none of that is federal dollars. I'm sorry, that's all raised by private.
All right, so we have 60 million that are federal dollars that comes through the discretionary fund. Why does the taxpayers need to be providing 60 million when you've got 127 million a year? I mean, I'm just going back to the question already asked. I'm trying to find, why is the taxpayer responsible for your expansion?
I'm not holding the taxpayers responsible for our expansion. In fact, the money that is paid for by the federal government through Medicaid, through Title X, through CDC grants, through HIV/AIDS programs, all pay for services directly provided to patients. And there's strict accountability, and we're accountable by HHS, looks at all the Medicaid payments. So we're grateful for the opportunity to serve patients who come into us on those programs. I think we provide very high quality, and that's why patients continue to come to us. And I think patients, regardless of whether they're on Medicaid or not, should have the option to go to the healthcare provider of their choice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentleman. The committee will now stand in recess and reconvene no sooner than 2 p.m. but we'll be beholden to the conclusion of these votes. Committee stands in recess.
All right, looks like they are taking a break from the hearing. They actually had part of this hearing earlier in the morning. I recorded some of it. So let's go ahead and listen to some of what was said earlier this morning. Obviously, it is the same topic, Planned Parenthood and the funding of it.
Aim and use ballot measures as a political and civic engagement tool for victory. And you gave them $200,000.
Sir, I run an organization that has a budget of roughly $200 million, and so when you pull out one figure out of the last 5 years, I'm trying to be responsive. It's important to, and perhaps you're not aware that there have been many efforts in states over the last several years to pass ballot initiatives that restrict women's access to birth control and reproductive health care.
But you also
We've absolutely been involved in ballot initiative measures that have been introduced by people who want to restrict women's health care.
If you want to be a private entity, be a private entity, but you don't need federal dollars in order to do this.
I don't use federal dollars to do that, sir.
You do to run the organization. Planned Parenthood has given Planned Parenthood Action Fund more than $22 million to exercise to involve in their lobbying expenditures and their advocacy efforts.
None of the dollars that you are discussing are federal dollars, and the Planned Parenthood Federation of America receives almost no federal dollars. I think at this point only $21,000 for a clinical trial network.
It goes to the same organization,
control.
and you just separate all that out. Let me
We
go to the
are
last one.
highly accountable.
I've gone over time. I need to show this last slide. This one I don't understand. And in the case of Dana, when she came to Planned Parenthood, did she get a mammogram?
No, she was referred for a mammogram. Absolutely.
And that's part of the challenge, is that you don't do mammograms. So if you... Go ahead.
I'm sorry,
You don't do mammograms, correct? There's like one or two places that doesn't, but you don't do mammograms.
If you would give me one moment to explain. Planned Parenthood is a women's health center, just like where I go for my breast exams every year. If you need a mammogram, you're referred to a radiological center, and that's how women actually receive their care. And we provide breast exams I can get you the numbers of how many hundreds of thousands of women received breast exams at Planned Parenthood last year. Has nothing to do with,
Here's
you
the
created this slide, I have no idea what
it
is.
Well, it's the reduction over the course of years in pink. That's the reduction in the breast exams. And the red is the increase in the abortions. That's what's going on in your organization.
This is a slide that has never been shown to me before. I'm happy to look at it, but it absolutely does not reflect what's happening at Planned Parenthood.
You're going to deny that if we take those numbers out of your report?
That you've just shown me that no one has ever provided us before. We've provided you all the information about everything, all the services that Planned Parenthood provides, and does it feel like we're trying to get to the truth here? You just showed me this. I'm happy to look at it.
I pulled those numbers directly out of your corporate reports.
Oh, excuse me, my loggers are informing me that the source of this is actually Americans United for Life, which is an anti-abortion group, so I would check your source.
Then we will get to the bottom of the truth of that. We will now recognize Mr. Cummings for a generous 7 minutes.
I thought it was 8, Mr. Chairman. I think it's 8.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Ms. Richards, I often hear women, including my wife, talk about the way women are treated as opposed to men. And not being a woman, I at the same time try to be sensitive. So I want to just the chairman just gave you a series of questions. I just have a few other ones. Ms. Richards, I find it extremely hypocritical that Republicans criticize the salaries of Planned Parenthood officials when you have violated no laws, especially while these same Republicans completely ignore the CEOs of huge companies that are actually guilty of breaking the law. Earlier this year, Citicorp, J.P. Morgan, and other major banks pled guilty to manipulating currency markets and interest rates. They were fined more than $5 billion for their actions. Yet Citigroup CEO still received $13 million last year, and J.P. Morgan CEO received $20 million. These banks get extensive federal support in the form of borrowing through the Federal Reserve's discount window and access to deposit insurance through the FDIC. Ms. Richards, do you know if House Republicans made any effort to strip the banks of their federal support that I just talked about?
I'm not aware.
Well, I can tell you they didn't. Johnson & Johnson, another one, was fined more than $2 billion for illegally marketing drugs and paying kickbacks to doctors and nursing homes. Yet the company's CEO still received $25 million last year. Ms. Richards, do you know if the House Republicans conducted an investigation of this company or other drug companies that violated the law? Do you?
I do not.
Well, I can answer that for you. No, they didn't. And they also never sought to deny them federal funding through Medicaid or to block their NIH grants. Let me go on. Last month, Lockheed Martin was fined millions of dollars for using taxpayer funds to lobby Congress to maintain its hold on a multi-billion-dollar Pentagon contract. Lockheed CEO received a stunning $33 million last year. Ms. Richards, do you know if there has been any investigation or any effort, to eliminate Lockheed Martin's federal funding?
Sounds like there hasn't been.
You got it. Of course there wasn't. These are huge companies that are actually guilty of breaking the law, and their CEOs make millions of dollars. Republicans never criticize the salaries of their CEOs, and they never try to strip their federal funding, their government subsidies, or their tax breaks. But when it comes to women's health, the Republicans' approach is completely different. Republicans targeted Planned Parenthood, which provides essential, high-quality care to millions of American women, more aggressively than all of these companies combined. With no evidence of wrongdoing, these Republican investigations multiply and the political theater continues. This whole defunding fight is just a pretext for the real Republican agenda. It's a pretext. Take away the constitutional right.
And use ballot measures as a political and civic engagement tool for victory. And you gave him $200,000.
Sir, I run an organization that has a budget of roughly $200 million, and so when you pull out...
All right, guys, that is a wrap on that clip. Again, that was just a clip that I recorded earlier. Basically, Fox has been sending us different feeds throughout the morning, so I've recorded different parts of that feed. So that was Cecile Richards speaking this morning at that same Planned Parenthood hearing that we were just watching live prior to that. Obviously, a very heated discussion. I know it's a very heated discussion in the chat room. You can tell it's very heated at that hearing. It's a House hearing on whether to defund Planned Parenthood. We just heard from Cecile Richards. She's the president of Planned Parenthood. And I don't know about you guys, but I felt like the individuals questioning Richards, it just became very heated and intense. It seemed almost more attacking than questioning. Personal opinion, but that's how I perceived it based on the tone of that person's voice. So obviously we are going to continue to monitor this story. If we get any more live feeds coming in from that hearing, we'll bring that to you here on News Now. But in the meantime, I want to switch things up. We had so many different events come in this morning, so I'm going to go ahead and play some of them right now. And Ron Hoon will be joining me momentarily. He is in that meeting. You know the meeting he always goes to. In fact, in case you don't know, I'm just going to show you. There's the Ron Hoon meeting over there. Yep, right over there. And speaking of hearings, Rand Paul also was speaking this morning. Let's go ahead and listen to this clip. Let's see if I can pull this up for you guys. Rand Paul, one of the presidential candidates that we don't get to hear from too much. senator. Let's see what he had to say.
The chairs. A continuing resolution continues the spending of wasteful money. I can go on about what we're wasting money on. I'll tell you of a few. We spent $300,000 last year studying whether or not Japanese quail are more sexually promiscuous on cocaine. I think we could poll the audience and save money. These things should never have money spent on, but if you do a continuing resolution, it will continue. We spent several $100,000 studying whether or not we can relieve stress in Vietnamese villagers by having them watch American television reruns. I don't know about you, but I don't want one penny of taxpayer dollar going to this ridiculous stuff. If we pass a continuing resolution, no reform will occur. We spent $800,000 in the last couple years developing a televised cricket league for Afghanistan. $800,000. Do you know how many people have a television in Afghanistan? 1 in 10,000 people, and I don't care if they've all got TVs. It's ridiculous that our money, which we don't even have, we have to borrow it from China to send it to Afghanistan. If you pass a continuing resolution, you're agreeing to continue this nonsense. We spent $150,000 last year on yoga classes for federal employees. So not only do we pay them nearly 1.5 times as much as the private sector employees, we give them yoga classes. If you pass a continuing resolution, this goes on and on. Nothing will change. The status quo will continue, and we will continue to spend ourselves into oblivion. We spent $250,000 last year inviting 24 kids from Pakistan to go to space camp in Alabama. We borrow money from China to send it to Pakistan. It's crazy, it's ridiculous, and it should stop. We have the power to stop it. Congress has the power to spend money or not spend money, and yet we roll down and we roll over and we say, it must continue. We don't have the votes to stop it. Nonsense. The other side doesn't have the vote to continue the spending if we would stand up and challenge them. We spent $500,000 last year or the year before developing a menu for when we colonize Mars. We sent a bunch of college students to Hawaii to study this. $5,000 apiece we paid them. They got 2 weeks, all expenses paid in Hawaii. And do you know what a bunch of college kids came up with for the menu for Mars? Pizza. This is where your money's going. I could go on hundreds and hundreds of programs. If we do not exert the power of the purse, this continues. We should attach to all of the spending bills, all 12 individual spending bills, not glommed together, we should attach hundreds of instructions, thousands of instructions. Now, some of the media have said, well, those would be riders on appropriation bills. Exactly. That's the power of the purse. If you object to the president writing regulations without our authority, Congress should defund the regulations. Congress should instruct him on Obamacare, what we object to. Congress should instruct him that we don't want money spent on Planned Parenthood. Hundreds and hundreds of instructions should be written into every bill and passed and sent to them. Would we win all of these battles? Do we have the power to win every battle and defund everything we want? No. But you know what we start out with? Our negotiating position right now is we start out with we defund nothing. Why don't we start out with a negotiating position that we defund everything that's objectionable, all the wasteful spending, all the duplicative spending, let's defund it all. And if there has to be a negotiation, let's start from defunding it all and see where we get. But it would take courage because you would have to let spending expire. If you're not willing to let the spending expire and start anew, you have no leverage. The power of the purse is only there if you have courage. You must have the courage of convictions to say enough's enough, that the debt is a greater threat to us than letting spending expire. Now, some will report on this speech and say, oh, he wants to shut down government. No, I don't. I just want to exert the power of the purse, and that means spending must expire. But I'm all for renewing the spending, but let's only renew the spending that makes sense. We have the power of the purse if we choose to exert it. Look at the mountain of debt. Look at the debt that continues to be added up. We have not been doing our job. The way we are supposed to spend money in Congress is 12 individual appropriation bills. They've passed out of committee. Why aren't they presented on the floor? The Democrats have filibustered the only one presented. Let's present every one of them and let the public know, let everyone in America know that it's Democrats filibustering the spending bills. It's Democrats who desire to shut down government. It's Democrats who desire not to have any restrictions on where the money's spent. It's the Democrats who are saying, we don't want to end wasteful spending. We don't want to end any spending. We don't want any controls over spending. We want to continue the status quo. But we should not be complicit with them. We have allowed this to go on for too long. It threatens the very heart of the republic. It threatens our very foundations to continue to borrow $1 million a minute. It's time that we stood up. It's time that we took a stand and said, enough's enough. When's the last time we did it in the appropriate fashion? When is the last time Congress passed each of the individual appropriation bills with instructions on how to spend the money? 2005, a decade ago. It's been a decade. In the last decade, we've added nearly $10 trillion in new debt. It's time to take a stand. I, for one, have had enough. I've had enough. I'm not going to vote for a continuing resolution. A continuing resolution is simply a continuation of the mounting debt. I, for one, will not do it. A continuing resolution is retreat. It is announcing your defeat in advance. What we should do is take a stand. We should say to the other side, in the Senate, it requires a supermajority. What does that mean? 60 votes to pass spending. What would happen? You would have spending that is controversial, like Planned Parenthood, would fall away. They can ask for private donations. Good luck on that. You wouldn't find things being funded that are controversial. What would happen is there would no longer be funding for wasteful and duplicative projects. You know that we listed these a couple years ago, and I think we had $7 billion worth of just duplication. Did we fix it? No. Every year the president, even this president, puts forward $10, $15, $20 billion worth of programs that could be eliminated. Do they ever get eliminated? No, because Congress is dysfunctional and we continue to pass a continuing resolution, which means we do nothing to exert the power of the purse. Congress is a shadow of what it once was. Madison said that we would have co-equal branches and that we would pit ambition against ambition. We no longer do that. Congress is a withering shadow. It's a shadow of what it once was. Congress has no power, exerts no power, and we walk and we live in the shadow of a presidency that is growing larger and larger and larger. The president's not afraid. He says he's got his pen and his phone. So he is writing and creating law. One of our founding fathers, one of our philosophers they looked to was Montesquieu. And Montesquieu said, when the executive begins to legislate, a form of tyranny will ensue. That's what we've got now. We have executive tyranny. It's not just this president, though. It's been going on for a while. Probably for 100 years, we've been allowing more and more power to accumulate in the hands of the presidency. What we need is a bipartisan taking back of that power. We need Congress to stand up on its own 2 feet and say, enough's enough. We are reclaiming the power of the purse, and we are going to do whatever is necessary to get rid of the wasteful spending, the duplicative spending, the offensive spending. And we are going to do what the American people want, and that is to spend only what comes in. But I will tell you, I, for one, will oppose this continuing resolution, and I recommend that everybody in America call their congressman and say, we're tired of the mounting debt. We want you to stand up. We want you to stand up and say enough's enough. Let the funding expire and make the other side come up with 60 votes to spend the money. It's time we took a stand. I hope we will. Thank you, Mr. President. All right, just.
Tucky.
I note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.
All right, guys, that is a wrap on that event. That was from earlier this morning when Rand Paul spoke. I recorded it for you guys so you could listen in on what that GOP presidential candidate had to say, because I feel like we're always showing you what Donald Trump is saying. We're always showing you Ben Carson, Jeb Bush, but we rarely show you Rand Paul. So I thought I would be fair and balanced and show you another presidential candidate speak. Although it wasn't a campaign event, he was just doing his job as senator, but I wanted to show you that anyways. We're going to move on from the world of politics. I know that the chat room has gotten a little heated. Obviously, we were talking about Planned Parenthood before, then government spending. So I'm going to put the political talk on hold momentarily. We're going to shift gears, lighten things up, talk about sports. Yes, Randy Johnson, Baseball Hall-of-Famer, legend, will be speaking at this event momentarily. You can see the setup right there. It's in honor of the Fiesta Bowl. Apparently, the Fiesta Bowl and the National Bank of Arizona will announce that Randy Johnson is the Grand Marshal of the parade. Yep. So the Fiesta Bowl will have Randy Johnson as the Grand Marshal of the 45th Annual Arizona Fiesta Bowl Parade. Again, if you don't know anything about Randy Johnson, Johnson is one of the most decorated pitchers in MLB history, having accumulated 303 wins, 4,875 strikeouts, and 5 Cy Young Awards during his 22-year career with 5 Major League Baseball teams. Just this past summer, Randy Johnson was elected into the Baseball Hall of Fame, and this is a pretty exciting event. As you know, Randy Johnson was on the Diamondbacks, and he will be the Grand Marshal of the Fiesta Bowl Parade. The Fiesta Bowl is an American college football bowl game that's played right here in Arizona. It's played at the University of Phoenix Stadium in Glendale. And as far as the date for that, I don't know the exact date, but it will serve as the semifinal for the college football playoffs, I'm learning. So Fiesta Bowl is Friday, January 1st. So it is on New Year's Day, apparently, according to Google. So stay tuned. We will be hearing from Randy Johnson momentarily.
Yeah, what is that?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending today's exciting press conference. I'm Denise Sioman, a member of the Fiesta Bowl committee. We have an exciting announcement today and are thrilled to have representatives from the Fiesta Bowl, National Bank of Arizona, and Randy Johnson here to talk about the upcoming National Bank of Arizona Fiesta Bowl Parade. This season, the parade will be held in Central Phoenix on January 2nd, 2016. Be sure to mark your calendars, as you won't want to miss all of the fantastic entries showcasing their interpretation of this year's theme, Arizona's Got Game. At this time, I would like to introduce the 2015-2016 Fiesta Bowl Chairman of the Board, Matt Winter.
Thanks, Denise. Welcome, everybody. Before I get started, I want to acknowledge our Executive Director, Mike Neely, over here. Mike and his team are doing wonderful things here at the Bowl, and we're really, really excited and pleased that they're here with us. So this year marks a historic milestone for us. This is the 45th anniversary of the National Bank of Arizona Fiesta Bowl Parade. Since its inception in 1971, hundreds of thousands of people have lined the parade route in Central Phoenix to watch and participate with wonderful, colorful bands, equestrian units, floats, helium balloons, and we're really, really excited this year to see what our entrants do to demonstrate our theme this year, which is Arizona's Got Game. The Fiesta Bowl is able to create these wonderful events for our community through our partnerships with businesses here in Arizona. And this year marks a continuation of our partnership with our title sponsor for the parade, National Bank of Arizona. We're incredibly excited to be working with them again this year. And we're more excited that their organization and ours share a common goal, which is to make Arizona the best place to live, work, and play. Over the last 5 years, the Fiesta Bowl has granted approximately $6 million to local deserving charities. And this year, we've committed to granting another $1.5 million, which is a record for Fiesta Bowl charities. So far this year, we've committed to grants to 40 organizations, and we'll continue that process throughout the season until we reach that $1.5 million goal. As Denise mentioned earlier, we don't want anybody to miss out on the opportunity to come out and enjoy the parade and participate in this great community event. So please, I encourage all of you and ask that you encourage everyone you know to come on out and participate in the 45th Annual National Bank of Arizona Parade, Fiesta Bowl Parade, on January 2nd in downtown Phoenix. Once again, thank you all for being here, and I'll hand it back to Denise.
Thank you, Matt. Next, please welcome Deborah Bateman, Vice Chairman of the Board of National Bank of Arizona. Deborah is involved in the ongoing development of the bank with a focus on its impact and engagement in the Arizona community. Deborah?
Well, do you not love the way it sounds? National Bank of Arizona Fiesta Bowl Parade. I mean, I love it. It just rolls right off the tongue. We are absolutely honored for the second year in a row now to be involved in this partnership. You know, and as you said, the goals and the alignment of both the Fiesta Bowl and National Bank, I think, align so incredibly well, because through it all and all the activity that we're doing, the bottom line on this is truly about elevating Arizona and making it a better place to live. So I can't wait to get started. It's absolutely an honor to be able to be involved in this historic and statewide community parade. And it's something that our engagement, we want to make sure that that happens. As you know, that we are a statewide bank, and so we're calling on our leaders throughout the state to get involved and get engaged and truly make this an Arizona event. I am probably the luckiest person in the whole world today because I get to announce the Grand Marshal of the 2015 National Bank of Arizona Fiesta Bowl Parade.
Who is it?
Any guesses? Any guesses? Randy, we've called you here, you know. Ladies and gentlemen, our Grand Marshal, Randy Johnson. You know, I could not be more delighted, more excited. I mean, I've got goosebumps. I can't wait to get my photos home and show my husband. But I mean, Randy's accomplishments, his involvement in our community, his drive, his determination, you know, all of those are things that I think you will agree that make him just an absolutely stellar candidate for this recognition and this award. So from speaking on behalf of National Bank of Arizona, we are so proud and pleased to be here and could not be more excited about Randy Johnson being our Grand Marshal.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you for sharing that exciting news. And with that, it gives me great pleasure to formally introduce this year's National Bank of Arizona Fiesta Bowl Parade Grand Marshal, Randy Johnson. As one of the most decorated pitchers in Major League Baseball history, Randy accumulated 303 wins, 4,875 strikeouts, and 5 Cy Young Awards during his illustrious 22-year career with 5 Major League Baseball teams. In July, the big unit was elected to the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, becoming the first member of the Hall to be depicted in Arizona Diamondbacks uniform on his plaque. Randy?
Thank you. Obviously, it's an honor to have been asked to be the Grand Marshal of the Fiesta Day Bowl Parade. I got word of this when I was in Japan. I was conducting some business with Derek Hall, the president of the Diamondbacks, and he had asked me if it would be in my schedule and something that would be doable. And when I got back home, I said, absolutely. As soon as I was asked to do this, I had an immediate flashback when I was about 7 or 8 years old. I grew up in a small little town in Northern California, Livermore, and we were known for being on the rodeo circuit. So we had a national rodeo there, and every year we would have a small parade. And I just remember being a young boy with my family and friends and always watching the parade. And to be asked, and then obviously I spent 3 years at the University of Southern California. I was a Trojan playing baseball there, so on many occasions I would see the Rose Bowl parade as well. And so I'm deeply honored. This has been a year that has been giving, and it hasn't stopped. And after all this, I just need to go on a vacation somewhere because it's just so overwhelming, the year that this has been. But I am so appreciative, and I will work on my wave, and I may even get a haircut.
Thank you, Randy. At this time, we'd also like to share with everyone the fact that with the Fiesta Bowl's partnership with Randy, and as Randy being our Grand Marshal of the National Bank of Arizona Fiesta Bowl Parade, that we are presenting a $10,000 check to Save the Family, which is a nonprofit organization that provides activities and opportunities for underprivileged children. And that $10,000 will specifically go to arts programs, including photography for children through grades K through 12. So thank you very much for that. At this time, we'd like to open up the floor for questions, and please note that there will be no media availability for our guests after today's press conference, so please use this opportunity to ask your questions of Randy, Matt, or Deborah. And also, please raise your hand so that we can get a mic to you first. Any questions?
You mentioned how important Arizona's been to you in your career. What does it mean to you personally to be selected as this year's Grand Marshal, and more specifically, being able to give back to the community?
When I was playing in Seattle from '89 to '98, about halfway through that 10 years, about '95, I actually started living here. I lived out in Peoria where the complex was. So I started making my off-season home here, and then in '99, obviously it was my first year here. So Arizona has been my home away from home, if you will, and now my permanent residence. My son goes to University of Arizona, and Arizona is my home. This is my community. I've done a lot of charity work here, Make-A-Wish. I've done a lot of homeless charity work here. I did a lot of work with corporate sponsors when I was playing baseball with Circle K. It's important when you are recognizable, and I guess I'm fairly recognizable. And I'm blessed that I was as successful as I was in my sport, that is my medium to give back. I've not forgot about the 4 years that I spent in the minor leagues after spending 22 in the major leagues. I've met a lot of people that, are in a situation that isn't as good as a lot of ours. And I think that, the homeless means a lot to me. That's why we gave $10,000 grant to that today. But there's a lot of charity things that I do because this is my community. This is the mark that I want to leave. It's not necessarily the baseball. I'm known for that, but I also want to be known now that I'm removed from baseball. This is a different me as well. I had a personality that has been well documented when I was playing, that's just the personality I had. Well, that's not me anymore. I'm moving on from that, and I'm extremely proud and honored to be the Grand Marshal. And I know the significance of it. I don't know if I'll get to drive the car, but if I do, I will go the speed limit. But this is my community. I couldn't be prouder when we won the World Series here. The biggest accomplishment I've ever been able to accomplish, and have our state of Arizona be supportive of that. And this will always be my home, regardless whether I'm the Grand Marshal or not. This is just one more great thing that has happened in my life that I will remember for forever. So it has significant meaning. Home, because it's all happening here where I live. Sorry about that long-winded answer.
Do we have a question in the back here?
Randy, I have a question for you. So you had a great year so far, Hall of Fame, retired jersey, Grand Marshal. I know you said you want a vacation, but what's next for you?
Geez, I don't know. I just kind of wake up every day and try to get through the day, but I really have some other passions that I had when I was playing baseball, just didn't have the time to do it, and photography is one. I really enjoy traveling now that I have the ability to do that. Also, I'm very much involved in the USO. Since the moment I retired in 2009, I've been on 7 or 8 USO tours, so I've traveled around the world supporting our troops. And unfortunately, when we were in the World Series was 9/11. So it really kind of came full circle to me and had a great deal of more meaning when the most meaningful thing in my sports life was shadowed by something as horrific in our country. And so when I go on USO tours now, the young men and women that I meet, some of them know me, some of them don't, but I tell them that a lot of you are in the service now, and where you're at, whether it's in Afghanistan or Kuwait or Iraq, a lot of you are here because of 9/11. And my tie with 9/11 is I was playing in the World Series. I saw Ground Zero firsthand. And so that it kind of came full circle. And, baseball for me, in all sports, and I know a lot of professional athletes, and some of them would agree, that, sports are great. It's fun sitting home on the recliner or watching football or baseball or whatever sport you would enjoy watching because it brings excitement to us. But to me as an athlete, I was living in a bubble. When I saw Ground Zero, or when I travel to a third world country and see people the way they live, and you can see it here as well, maybe not to the extent, that's the real world. And that's what I am seeing now more than not, because when I was playing baseball, I didn't have the chance to do these kind of things. And so when I get the chance to shake a young man or woman's hand that's volunteering to protect our freedom, I enjoy doing that. And so those are the things that I'm doing now that have a great deal of meaning. I'm still involved with the Diamondbacks. I still go to spring training and help them in whatever capacity I can. And I still am seen at the ballpark. And like I said, I traveled to Japan with the front office people to go and watch some Japanese games over there. But I'm staying busy. I'm enjoying my life, and I'm doing the things that really I feel in a certain way are giving back.
We have time for one more question over here.
Yeah, Randy mentioned working with the Diamondbacks, and how is it when you can share some of the talent you've had as a pitcher and success and share that with the young players? Are you enjoying that part of it?
Well, I have, and that usually happens in spring training, and the kids that I talk to and that I've actually traveled to go see are the minor league kids. I've traveled to Reno, where our AAA affiliate is, and then I spent 4 days in Mobile, Alabama, where our AA affiliate is. And I feel those younger kids are more impressionable, and I can help them probably more so than a major league player, because he's kind of already set in his ways. And so if I'm working with the Diamondbacks in that same capacity next year, that's what I would like to do. This has been a whirlwind of a year for me, so I got to mix some business and pleasure this year, and a lot of the things that I experienced this year will kind of calm down. And then next year, if I'm working with the Diamondbacks, I would like to travel a little bit more to visit the minor leagues organization and help them, because I feel I can help the minor league kids more in that arena than the major league players.
Randy, one more. Would you like to see the Trojans in the Fiesta Bowl or the championship game?
I would love to see them playing in the championship game. Yes. I was glued to the TV set this week. Sorry, Arizona State, but my true colors come first. And but this is my state. But I'm pulling for Pat Hayden and our Trojans. And it's been an interesting last couple of years. But hopefully this will be the year where we're off to a good start. And hope to see them play for the national championship.
Well, this concludes today's press conference. Thank you again for attending, and please don't forget to mark your calendars January 2nd for the National Bank of Arizona Fiesta Bowl Parade with Grand Marshal Randy Johnson. Thank you.
All right, guys, that is a wrap on that event. As I mentioned before, Randy Johnson, MLB Hall-of-Famer. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame this past summer, played 22 seasons of professional baseball, was on 5 different teams, lives right here in Arizona, and he has been named the Grand Marshal of the Fiesta Bowl Parade. Fiesta Bowl, January 1st, 2016, will be a playoff game as part of the College Football Championship Series. That's all I have to say right now. Ron Hoon has been summoned. He should be sitting right here momentarily. In the meantime, let's go check out Air Force One. Air Force One has landed somewhere, and I think the president will get out the plane soon. Hi, Ron Hoon.
Hi, SK.
Welcome to the News Now set. I'm happy to have you.
I'm glad to be here as always. I see that you're halfway through a chocolate chip cookie.
Not exactly halfway, more like a third way. This is not a full half.
Well, let's
it's a little
show
more
everybody.
Than half.
What
This is courtesy of Corey McCloskey.
Oh, that core, man. He eats like a prince. I mean, we're sending him every day to some new cafe or coffee shop or restaurant.
Something. Yeah, and it's National Coffee Day, so obviously he was at a coffee shop this morning. And I was watching the morning show. I was watching his hit, and one of his hits.
Thank you.
You guys do great, by the way.
I thought
you
so
guys
too.
should watch it, definitely, if you don't already.
Hi, Joe. Hi, Rachel.
And they had pulled cookies out of the oven. So when Corey walked in, and I sit very conveniently to the door that Corey walks in to every morning, I saw him carrying boxes. I'm like, are there cookies in there? And he just came over. Nice. It was very kind of him.
Nice.
Very kind. So again, this is Air Force One. I don't know specifically where the president just landed, only because it's very difficult for me to hear this black box from here, especially when I have the earpiece in.
Okay.
I just hear that they're saying something, but I never hear the actual words being said. But we can probably find that out momentarily. All I have to do is look up the president's schedule. I know USA Today posts it every single day, and I think so does.
Oh, and there they come.
Obama.
Don't you love seeing them hold hands like that?
They're very cute.
Well, now, Michelle Obama was just doing some national media this morning, I think I saw.
I know she did late night media yesterday. I
Oh,
think.
maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was replay stuff. Okay.
So they just left New York. They're arriving back in
At Andrews.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So she did the late night talks last night.
Right, and he was at the UN. It all makes sense.
And I think she might have actually done at least one of the morning shows this week.
Okay, probably next. So yeah,
And
they were
so
both
they're
in
back.
New York,
Yeah.
and now they're back.
Yeah.
Returning from his UN trip.
Wouldn't you love to be on Air Force One just once? I mean, I'm not saying it's probably
Yes.
not exactly like the Harrison Ford movie. It probably is just like that. I don't know. But it would be so cool
Barack
to
waiting
get a
for
chance
Michelle. Does Michelle Obama ever go out without makeup on?
I can actually tell you I've never thought about that.
I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
So that was fun. That was fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we can move on to
I wonder if he thinks it was a good trip to the UN.
What's your take?
I don't think it was especially good.
Elaborate.
Well, I just think that we don't I hate to invoke the name so early on in our visit of John McCain, but McCain has said so many times, we have no strategy over there. We have none.
I think we have a soundbite from McCain, actually.
But, so, I mean, now...
Putin outplayed the United States.
Oh my gosh.
Do you want to hear what Mr.
Is
McCain
that right?
had to tell Fox
Well,
News this
before we
morning?
hear from the senator, let me just tell you, because I have no idea what he's going to say, but this is interesting. We set red lines, and then we do nothing. Meaning our heart wasn't in it in the first place. You think that either our enemies or our allies in the Middle East can't figure that out? That America has no heart for any type of fight over there. And, you know, ISIS is beheading people and all the horrible things that we see, but primarily they are taking on people in their part of the world, and that should be the part of the world that takes them on. However, we still are the big superpower in the world. But you know what? We're not right now. At least we're not acting like it because...
Who is? China?
Russia.
Oh, Russia.
Because when the Iranians and the Iraqis, you know, who aren't exactly like la-di-da, we love each other all the time, when the Iranians and the Iraqis say, Russia, we're willing to work with you because you guys are showing that you will take, because we do feel threatened by ISIS. Both of those governments had better. The Iranian government and the Iraqi government had better feel threatened by ISIS, and we know Syria's government does. And so, but the thing is, Putin's government does too. The amount, I just read this morning, the number of ISIS fighters who are going and training with ISIS and now returning to the far southern regions of Russia where they have some militant extremism. It doesn't even need to be. I think it would just slow me down today.
I just want to pull up this map.
Okay. So you go all the way, I mean, the far southern parts of Russia go almost down and touch Turkey, you know? Widen that map out just a little bit more, or drop it down just a little bit more. And so, look at the Tsarnaev brothers, right? With their connections to the Chechen region of Russia. And the last thing, and so they've got radicalized. The last thing Putin needs, and he's way closer to the Middle East, you could walk.
So here's Russia.
Yes.
Russia's a very big country.
And drop right down there. You could walk from the southern part of Russia right into Syria. Look at that. Look how close you could be. Now, I'm not saying we're not threatened, but we are not threatened by ISIS the way Russia is.
Well, I mean, Syria's still down here. You have to go through Turkey and
Yeah, but
Georgia
think about this, Samia. Look, now widen out and show Germany. You have everyday Syrians who are willing to walk all across Syria, all across Turkey,
right here,
all across
here.
Bulgaria, Romania, to get all the way to Germany. So you can't tell me, let me just grab this real quick. You can't tell me that people who are motivated to hate,
Right, I see what you're saying.
you know, they can't get from here, which is total ISIS territory, right where the word Syria is, that's total ISIS territory. All Assad has left now is Damascus and the coastline.
Wow.
And so he's begging for help. And these guys, it's how easy would it be for them to just get right up over here into the Chechen region.
Looking at that map, you can easily see why Iraq is concerned. Iran's concerned. They're literally right there.
Sure.
And yeah, I guess it makes sense. Russia is very close.
Yeah. So let's not
What
make
about
this...
Jordan? Does Jordan worry?
Well, you know...
Because Jordan is relatively westernized for a Middle Eastern country, from my understanding.
Correct. My understanding
As is Lebanon.
My understanding
I hear
is
Lebanon's
that
fun.
they have a strong apparatus within their nation. I don't know what their version of like the CIA or the would be exactly, and it's not really a CIA type thing, but that they have a strong enough apparatus that they keep track of militant Islam and are able to thwart it pretty well. The other thing I understand is that up with Lebanon and Jordan, they finally had enough of Syrian refugees coming their direction and whether they closed their borders or made it plain that they didn't want more people coming into their country, I think that was part of why refugees said, suddenly start flocking to Europe. And the original statements out of Germany were encouraging, and now, of course, they're not. So
I can see why people are. Syria is so close to Saudi Arabia, and they wouldn't let anyone in, right?
Right. So, I mean, it just depends. I don't want to say it's like a secret police type thing, but they all have their systems for keeping it in check and under control. But Assad and his government is so under attack, and they don't get any support from us, obviously. He's not really politically a friend of ours. He hasn't been getting a lot of support from Russia, and so Russia's now going in, and they are going to accomplish a bunch of different things, one of which is that Putin then can fight the threat of these extremists coming back over into Chechnya, that they, from what I read, there are already hundreds that have gone into ISIS territory and are now back in Russia. And I think he feels like he's got to nip it in the bud now. But also, he wants to be seen as the power player in that region and every other part of the world. He wants to get Russia back not only to the main stage of being a superpower, he wants them to be the superpower. And it's a feather in his cap that he got the Iraqis and the Iranians. You know, he even met with Netanyahu. Yeah, he met with the leader of Israel. So he's doing everything he can.
And Netanyahu and Obama don't necessarily get along.
So what if Putin, establishes a firmer relationship? The problem is we can't only talk. We have to back it up. And I know nobody has an appetite for war, for another war, but somehow we have to at least show some level of strength so that people believe that our words matter, because right now I don't believe they do. I don't believe people think they do anyway. And so, I mean, for Obama to get up there at the UN and say, well, it would be nice if Syria was a democracy. That's our hope and our goal, Assad has got to go and somebody better's got to come in. We don't know who that's going to be. It could very well be ISIS.
That
honestly.
would be bad. I want to read some of the viewer comments. Tapalea is saying Syria is Russia's ally. Let them handle it.
Now, let me interrupt with each comment that comes around, if
Okay.
there's a good thought. That's exactly what Donald Trump is saying. Trump said last night in an interview, he said, look, if Russia wants to go into Syria and fight ISIS, let them. That's a fight we don't have to fight. And it is a closer to their doorstep by far fight for them to fight. And we already proved we have no stomach for the fight. And, Putin obviously does. So the question is,
it an
will
ego
we?
thing?
It is an ego thing between him and Obama, no doubt. Will we allow him to lead the fight against ISIS? I mean, you could build a world coalition, but because we're such enemies with them, and because there's so much animosity between these two guys specifically, I just don't know if they can get over that for the good of the rest of the world in fighting ISIS. What would be better than having most of the world's superpowers and mid-level powers too, all joining together to fight ISIS? And then once that fight is fought, then you can have your conferences afterwards, and then you can negotiate, does Assad stay or does he go? But to throw that in as, well, then we're not even going to play ball because we don't like that guy, it just doesn't come off right. It just doesn't come off right at all.
Let's read a couple more comments. Joe Foley asked again, or saying, if Putin bombs ISIS, what happens after with Assad? Will Putin come out and say it's time to stand aside? Or does the coalition bomb Assad with Russian military in Syria?
Well, I think that it's a good question. That was Joe. And so, Joe, you know very well that what happens at the end of these major military conflicts, because you know your British history, is that the powers that played the key role will sit and decide, and the bit players, which if you have Russia, the United States, and let's face it, we worked together on World War II. If you have Russia and the United States, what if they get China to come in? What if they get several of the world's major militaries to come in on this? Then what happened at the end of World War II? The big people, the United States, right, and Russia, and the British, Winston Churchill, Joseph Stalin, Harry Truman,
They made the decisions. They called the shots.
So then
to throw Assad in there and say, well, we're just not going to do anything, would be like the U.S. in World War II saying, well, we don't like so-and-so that we would have to work with, and we don't want to dirty our hands. You have to get in there, and you have to actually win this fight against ISIS. At some point, they're only getting stronger and more powerful and more vicious. So you have to be willing to sometimes, like they say, enemies make strange bedfellows. And sometimes you have to figure out who you're going to work with. And then at the end, if all of the big guys say, sorry, Bashir, but you do have to go, he won't have a choice. He will have to go. And they can set him up in some, I don't know, like Napoleon on some island or something, and say, look, we'll give you, you can have your own island or whatever. I don't know.
It's not a bad deal.
Yeah.
Kapolei is saying Assad has been
just
fighting
go away.
terrorists for the world for 5 years. Why do we need to overthrow him? He is on the side of the right.
Well, Donald Trump, again, I'll just quote, he said, yeah, I'm not saying Assad is a good guy, but he's a lot less worse than what we're seeing from the other side, meaning from ISIS.
Right. Kapolei is saying we
Who
should
do
have
we
been
want to have our
aiding.
fight with?
Kapolei is saying we should have been aiding Assad years ago to begin with instead of arming ISIS terrorists that have created this immigration problem.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Foley, Hooner, why is the coalition so close to Saudi Arabia when they fund terrorism and have had a bad human rights record?
Well, I think that's a really complicated relationship with Saudi Arabia. I mean, the 9/11 terrorists were Saudis, okay? The vast majority of them were.
But they didn't
anyway.
come from Saudi, did they? Were they ethnically Saudi Arabian, or did they come from there?
I sort of thought they were from there.
I
Of course,
mean,
they came to America and trained and everything, but I think their nationalities were Saudi. But they keep, in Saudi Arabia, they keep such a firm control on things that I think, again, that's another country that is not going to mess around, and they've got enough of a apparatus in place to keep that type of extremism in check. And so everything gets complicated with Saudi Arabia because of one word, oil.
Right.
So we have to, and oil plays a key role in all of these relationships. Part of what Putin also wants, let's be honest about it, he wants more power himself. But for the Russian Empire, they are now, from what my understanding is, they're building a second port, like a military port, that they will be able to use in the future to strengthen their influence in that part of the world. And that's part of what we don't like. That's part of why it's going to be tough for us to work with him, because he's obviously going to try to take advantage of the situation. But there's a town. Can you zoom into Syria?
I can.
There's a town right now in Syria. Zoom into the coastline of Syria, specifically up above Lebanon there. And so Tartus is right now where Russia has a base. And my understanding is they are now building, either they're already in the process of building or hope to build soon, a second base / port for themselves in Latakia, which is right up there. So we're looking at the two main Syrian ports for Russia to have more of a long-term opportunity to have influence in that part of the world. And so, there's all kinds of geopolitics involved, but I think most people look at it and say, that relationship between us and the Russians has a great ebb and flow. Gorbachev and Reagan were actually able to get together and get a bunch of stuff accomplished and improve the relations between the two countries dramatically. Right now, it's as frosty as it's been in a long, long time, but because Obama and Putin don't like each other. But those two countries can come back together. They do have the joint enemy of violent Islamic terrorism. And so they with that joint enemy, they ought to be able to fight this fight and then sort everything out later. A lot of it, weirdly enough, has to do with the relationship between whichever man or woman, if it's Hillary, and whichever man or woman is running Russia, the personal relationship. If you remember in the early days of George W. Bush, he and Putin actually got along pretty well. He had Putin down to the ranch in Texas. He said, I've looked into this man's eyes, and, I feel like he's somebody I can do business with.
Oh, man. I want to read a few more viewer comments. Lana saying, I have a friend that escaped from Baghdad, and when he left 15 years ago, the terror was mostly in Egypt. Billy Z. Cruzen saying, every country that takes in immigrants and refugees has higher crime rates within months. It's pathetic. Les Chalmain saying, Obama helped the rebels but refused to give them full support to achieve victory to end the war. Either Obama was indecisive or he really wanted the war to be drawn out for reasons.
Okay, see, now that's a good point, too, which is that we have been indecisive over there. And honestly, to go up in front of the world powers at the UN and say, well, you know, we'd rather have it be a democracy. These kinds of things don't happen in democracies, that Assad has got to go. When our plan is to, quote, arm the moderate rebels and to drop some bombs from thousands of feet in the sky. It's totally ineffective. And to arm the moderate rebels. And what did they say? Like 12 guys signed up? Remember? I mean, they were in a Senate hearing a couple of weeks ago, and they wanted to get some numbers, and all the senators were just like, you've got to be kidding me. We've spent multi-millions of dollars, and we got 12 people? I mean, it's laughable to then stand up there and say, well, Assad has got to go, because we don't have a plan. And we don't have any idea, extremely naively, we don't have any idea who would seize power if we were able to boot Assad out of there.
Right. Joe's saying, but when an outsider puts a new government in control, it never works. It will just be more inside fighting.
Correct. Ultimately, it does have to come from the will of the people. But to start with, you have to get rid of this terrorist group.
Well, here's Billy's take. America can't even secure its borders, yet we're supposed to invade other countries and protect their borders and people. It doesn't add up.
You know, who said that, Billy?
Billy Z. Cruzen.
It is a really good point. I mean, it is a really good point. But the problem is ISIS is sort of borderless. You know, they don't, they kind of move about freely in that part of the world. I think for a while we thought the Kurds were going to be our friends and fight this fight for us. And for a while we thought the Turks were going to be our friends and fight this fight.
What did they never assume?
Well, they just don't. Look at Afghanistan today. A major Afghanistan city was taken over yesterday by the Taliban.
I did not know that.
Oh, I forget the name of it, but it was a good-sized city. So what are we going to do?
Watch.
We'll drop a few more bombs from way up high.
Joe Foley, Hooner, how true is it that Russia PI surfaced 2 air missiles inside Syria so the coalition couldn't put a no-fly zone on Syria because we know ISIS doesn't have fighter jets?
Well, again, I just think the coalition, meaning the Western world powers, for the time being, is fighting the wrong fight. They have this long-running hatred of Assad, and they want to fight that fight when everybody else can see the fight that needs to be fought right now is ISIS.
Right. Les Chalmain saying the Middle East needs someone like a Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi. Too bad we got rid of them. Some people just love to be slaves to some barbaric religion and oppression. You can't wake someone who refuses to wake up.
Well, I mean, let's face it, these guys get so brainwashed, you know, and so radicalized, and they take a great religion and they...
Well, I read something like crazy about like one of the main ISIS leaders.
Yeah.
Like hasn't even like read the Quran once, or like doesn't even pray. It was something like doesn't know how to pray. Something, some crazy fact like that. I saw that on the internet sometime in the last couple of weeks, and it's just like, all right, there you go.
I know. You know what's funny about it?
It's just a power
I
thing.
was having lunch with a friend of mine yesterday who used to live in Ireland, and do you know that there's been violence in Northern Ireland? We all thought the Troubles were over. But somebody was killed. I need to really look into it, but somebody was killed that might have a connection to the long simmering feuds that have happened over there in Ireland. And it's just, to me, when people use, especially when they use religion, which is supposed to be, you know, something that's like, if you choose to follow it, it should make you a better person and make you a better person, and make your view of the world more beautiful, and make the world more peaceful. That's what I think religion is supposed to be. And people who use it to hate other people or to, you know, kill other people, or even now the worst we've ever seen, chop their heads off, it's just the worst. It's just the worst.
Shall we hear what McCain has to say about Putin in the U.S.?
Yeah. In fact, I can't believe we've just about eaten up all the time. I'm gonna have to go in a minute.
I know.
But anyway, Samia, you got me on a roll today.
It was very I don't feel like we've had such a just international news or / international politics discussion up here. Usually we're always talking about what's happening here and the latest with Trump.
The latest with Trump all of a sudden doesn't seem so important, does it?
Do you have anything to say about Trump, though?
Nah,
like
let's save it
did.
for another day.
Okay.
This is too important. It makes everything else seem kind of dumb, honestly, you know? So let's hear what McCain has to say about this.
Senator McCain, let's listen to him.
I always played the United States like a Stradivarius. The fact is that we have no strategy. We have no plan besides some airstrikes, which have clearly been ineffectual. And we now see the other nations in the region adjusting to a vacuum that's created by the withdrawal of the United States, whether it be the Arab countries that are now going to Moscow and doing arms deals, or whether it be the Iraqis now announcing, not telling us, but announcing that they are going to share intelligence with Russia, Iran, and Syria. That means Bashar al-Assad. So they have an alliance with Bashar al-Assad. There is no strategy, and this is, the chickens have come home to roost. And could I also add, one of the most incredible statements I've ever seen by a presidential spokesman, it was kind of missed, I don't know why, when the presidential spokesman said that the president felt vindicated by the failure of the Arm and Train and Equip program, which, as you know, the general said is now 4 or 5 people, that the president was vindicated because he was against it all along. Harry Truman must be spinning in his grave. I was recently in Ukraine. I'll tell you, the Ukrainians are very nervous about it. They're going to throw, is the president going to throw them under the bus and basically acknowledge the dismemberment of that country that Putin has been responsible for? I'm not against the president speaking with Putin, but when the Secretary of State calls the foreign minister of Russia 3 times to try to find out what Russia is doing, what is that? What kind of leadership role is that? I think in the days of Ronald Reagan, it would have been 1 phone call, and that would have been, stop what you're doing, or you're going to pay a very heavy price for it. What do we care about evil people that behead Americans on the internet? What do we care about an organization that destroys antiquities, that especially targets Christians for execution and slavery? Yeah, I don't know why we should care. I guess he's got a point. Look, ISIS, we now know that many thousands more are pouring into Egypt, into Iraq and Syria. We know that this problem is of the utmost seriousness. It's spreading throughout the Middle East. ISIS is now establishing themselves in Afghanistan. So all I can say is I respectfully disagree with Mr. Trump's assessment, as I have on several others, including his statement, just take away their oil. I don't understand that one either, but the major point is the total mismanagement, lack of strategy, vacuum created by this President of the United States, which has created, among other things, this flood of refugees. General Petraeus testified before our committee, as you know, last week. He said what we have been saying all along: set up a buffer zone, stop the barrel bombing, go ahead and train and equip people, have a safe haven for refugees, and none of that has happened.
Well, there's another reason we should get him on News Now, you know, honestly.
The list is never ending.
But, I mean, he's got a good take on a lot of that stuff. And he's obviously very knowledgeable because he knows all the key players.
And he's campaigning. He's running again next year.
Correct. And
another reason to make an appearance.
Yeah, and he's been over to pretty much every area that's being affected now. So, anyway, we need to do a lot more on this. We really, truly do. It's... once Putin flexed his muscle and said, you know, it does sound to me, if he was willing to go meet with America's greatest friend in that entire part of the world, within 1,000 miles, I'm talking about Israel, and go meet with Netanyahu to explain what he wants to do, and was willing to meet with Obama, you know. Of course, Obama then gave that speech that basically threw him under the bus right before they met, saying, you know, Russia has got to... I mean, there are certainly points that Obama makes that are... I'm not saying they're pie in the sky. They're good goals. They are good goals. For Syria to ultimately someday be a democracy is a good goal. But you got to get real in this fight against ISIS, and you've got to... You think anybody... Really, in World War II, the Russians weren't our friends. You know, but we used them, and they used us.
Because the Cold War just happened right after World War II.
Absolutely it did. I mean, it just, as soon as the war was... It's weird. As soon as the war was over...
We went into war with them.
I mean, yeah, we were basically at war with them for the next 40 years, but yet we were able to work together to fight a better enemy. Now, so do we have lesser world leaders today that can't see that, that can't learn from history? I almost think we do. Anyway, I gotta go.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thanks for hanging, Ron Hoon.
Thank you.
One of the nations that McCain just mentioned was Ukraine.
Okay.
And earlier today, the Ukrainian president spoke at the UN, as you know, many world leaders speaking.
Yeah.
At the UN, at the World Leaders Summit. So I'm going to play this clip. It's only about 10 minutes long, guys. So I figure since we're on the topic
This will be good.
International relations, we should listen to the Ukrainian leader speak at the UN General Assembly, kicked off yesterday.
Okay.
Just my take.
Dear Mr. President, unfortunately, not my own free will today, Ukraine is on as one of the areas to fight against terrorist threat. We strongly condemn terrorism in all its form and manifestation. The activity of ISIL, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, the others is a global challenge. The only possible way to address it is to unite in common and non-compromised fight against this evil. International terrorism has proved to be more flexible than the political will of the nation, and today it's taken a new hybrid form. State and non-state actors have become interlinked. The struggle for one's right is substituted for the ruthless terror. We are convinced that the need for the universal international instrument able to counteract this crime is not only the urgent, but long overdue. For this reason, the conclusion of the preparatory work on the draft of the United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Combating of the Terrorism should become one of the top priorities for this 70th session. A special role in the fight against international terrorism should be given to the most reputable legal institution, the International Court for Justice and the International Criminal Court. Making the jurisdiction of this institution universal is the core element of the overcoming impunity of actual violation, as well as their patrons, the regime whose national policy has become the mass production of terror. And I strongly believe that one of the most important aspects fighting against terrorism is keeping and sharing the memory of the victims. And in this context, I propose that the 17th session of the General Assembly consider the establishment of the International Day of the commemoration of the memory of the victims of the terrorist act. Mr. President, it was my feeling that humiliation, disregard of the people, will, and the violation their fundamental rights that prompt Ukrainians to leave their homes for protest in 2013, which was the beginning of our revolution of dignity. Ukraine has paid and continues to pay an extremely high price for its freedom and the right to live in a free country, the price of the human lives. This is why the interest of every single individual and the protection of the people's right laid in the foundation of my large-scale reform program launched a year ago. For the first time in 24 years of its independence, Ukraine adopted the National Human Rights Strategy. It took into account the best international practice from the human rights perspective, including the European Union Strategic Framework on Human Rights and Democracy. Russian aggression exposed the problem of securing the human rights in the Crimea and the certain area of Donetsk and Lugansk region. Leading international human rights organizations have alerted about the radical deterioration of human rights situation which directly apply to Ukrainian and Crimean Tatar in the occupied Crimea. And I am referring specifically to the practice used by the occupation authority in the Crimea to enlist forcefully into Russian citizenship, as well as to the systematic persecution, arrest, abduction and killing pro-Ukrainian residents of Peninsula and complete elimination of the independent media. Ukraine reaffirms its commitment to the UN Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People. By the legal means, we will continue to defend the rights of the Crimean Tatar, the indigenous people of Ukraine, and the Ukrainians who are suffering from the repressive policy of the occupation authority in the Crimea. And I believe that the problem of blatant violation of human rights in Crimea deserves a particular consideration within UN General Assembly. And I hope that the decision to address this issue will be taken during the current session. I also feel obliged to mention the name of Nadia Savchenko, Oleg Sentsov, Alexander Kolchenko, and many other Ukrainians, political prisoners of the Kremlin, illegally detained and sentenced. For example, Oleg Sentsov, a respected filmmaker, was sentenced for 23 years in prison only for being Ukrainian patriot. And I call upon the United Nations and its member states to launch a worldwide campaign to pressure on Russian authorities to immediately release all Ukrainian citizens which they hold hostage. We will be able to achieve our goal only if our action would be global. Most of all, Ukraine needs solidarity and assistance, which is really a powerful instrument against aggression and injustice. Ukraine will win, sure, because truth is on our side, but we will do it much faster if we will feel support and solidarity of the whole international community. The ongoing hybrid war of Russia against Ukraine has demonstrated that the international community is facing another challenge which requires consolidation of our efforts. And the full-scale information war and the propaganda campaign have become a particularly destructive form of non-military aggression. Fake news, blatant lies spread to justify the aggression, propaganda of intolerance and violence are phenomena of the same range which undermine the principle of freedom of expression and poison human soul and minds. That is why the task of strengthening the role of information in the maintenance of the peace and security is more important than ever. And I call upon the General Assembly to strongly condemn this shameful phenomena and to discuss the ways to confront them. Mr. President, despite the above-mentioned external challenges, Ukraine is fully committed to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. We are ready to share joint responsibility for the solving specific vital problem and priorities of the most vulnerable group of countries such as small island states. Ukraine, as a member of Friends of Climate Group, is looking forward to reach consensus on the universal agreement in the area of climate change as soon as possible. We hope that this result will be achieved by United Nations member states in December this year in Paris.
Hey guys, it's Mike.
We have to understand that
over.
the price of this issue would be safety of future generation and sustainable development of the mankind. The path toward the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals will not be successful without overcoming and preventing consequences of the environmental and technological disaster. As a result of the Russian aggression, Ukraine faced another challenge, the protection of the environment in Donbass. Irresponsible and criminal flooding of mines by terrorists led to the poisoning of drinking water, soil, flora and fauna in the region. The atmosphere is polluted due to explosion and shelling of sensitive industrial infrastructure. In fact, we can speak about the risk of environmental disaster, and I am convinced that the issue of the environment protection under the condition of the conflict needs special attention of the United Nations Environment Assembly. Speaking about the technological disaster, I cannot but recall one of the most horrific of them. Next year we will mark the sad anniversary, 30 years since the tragedy of Chernobyl nuclear power station. And I would like to request.
All right, folks, we're going to stop
President,
this tape here because we just seen a Jeb Bush event pop up, so we are going to go to that right now.
Guy right there. It is. This is a great American success story, and I'm honored that they're hosting us here as we unveil our energy initiative, our energy policy. It is a great American tradition for families to stay together to build businesses. In fact, it's quite common in the oil sector that this takes place, and this is an extraordinary company, and I'm honored to be here. I want to mention Toby just for a little bit because he's the second brother, and I always admired the second brothers in families. I don't know about you. I think the guy's going places. This is a great business that has taken an idea and invested in the idea, took risks, a great American concept, and applied technology in a way that has built a public business now that has created jobs, not just at this business, more than 300 jobs, but all sorts of other suppliers now count on Rice Energy as their source for their livelihood. The energy sector in our country is perhaps the most value-added of any that exists, perhaps even more than information technology. When people look at the economy, everybody marvels, right, of the entrepreneurs of Silicon Valley, and there's much to appreciate there. People are reinventing the wheel and creating prosperity and creating opportunities for people out on the West Coast. But the oil and gas sector has been the driver for economic growth, even when you have a president and an administration that has tried to push it down. I just recently saw a study that 40% of all the economic activity since 2008 has happened because of the energy sector in this country. 40%. And if you look at how the wages go and the jobs created, it's a quite similar number. The energy business in this country creates 2 times the median wage in the communities in which they serve. And you see the benefits of it. You also see the benefits of the free enterprise system at work. If you think about the concept of hydraulic fracking and horizontal drilling, it's been around for a long time, right? These are 2 existing technologies. It took a private business in the Barnett Shale play in Fort Worth, a Greek immigrant, by the way, in a private business through trial and error that made it possible for people to realize the potential of this. And then the next generation of entrepreneurs now have exploited this concept to create the possibility of us being energy secure with North American resources within 5 years. It is an aspiration that is real, and I just appreciate the entrepreneurship that makes it a reality. It's not just celebrating American entrepreneurship why that's important. Because energy security with North American resources also means that we'll have the lowest cost source of energy to outcompete anybody. I'm sick and tired of people thinking that the Chinese are eating our lunch. What we need to do is to tear down the barriers so that we can outcompete the Chinese and anybody else, and I know America can do it. I've laid out a plan to lift our spirits up a little bit. The new normal in America today is 2% growth. 2% growth means that 6 million more people are living in poverty than the day that Barack Obama got elected president. 2% growth means that disposable income in this country is down close to $2,000 than the day that Barack Obama got elected president. 2% growth, the new normal that the left says you just have to get used to, means that 6.5 million people are working part-time. 2% growth means that workforce participation rates are lower today than they were in 1977. Why not aspire to a 4% growth? 4% growth means that more money is going to be in people's pockets, that people will be lifted out of poverty, that people will get a job and be able to take a risk and maybe start their own business, or be able to grow their income because we're investing in the future of this country. 4% growth means that we're strong and we're optimistic and we're hopeful and we're aspirational again. 4% growth means we lead the world, which is exactly what the United States should do. So how do you create 4% growth and rising income that goes along with it? Well, we need to reform the tax code, and I've unveiled a strategy to do that. A corporate tax rate, boys, of 20%, not 35%. Of fully expensing the capital investment that you all make so that you invest more and more, just as we need to do in this country. We should lead the world in creating a 21st century manufacturing sector with great workers, with great innovation and low energy costs and energy sources as far as the eye can see. We could recreate industrial might, and if we did, we would be stronger and our communities would be renewing itself. We need to fix the regulatory system in this country. The mind-numbing rules each and every day from Washington, D.C., thousands and thousands of new rules. The cost of regulation is $1.9 trillion on our economy. That's equal to $15,000 per American family. That means we're not creating the kind of jobs that we have, whether it's Obamacare that creates higher health care costs, or the EPA deciding they're going to get involved in things they never imagined before. In fact, just for you in Pennsylvania, I read something yesterday or day before yesterday that 98% of the entire landmass of Pennsylvania will now have to comply with the Waters of the United States rule that EPA has, where the EPA now is going to have to give permits out for just about everything, whether it's building a shopping center and having a retaining pond. Navigable waters now is the broadest definition possible. It is repressing the ability for us to grow. In the energy sector, it's perhaps the greatest threat. Whether it's methane gas regulation from Washington instead of using common sense regulations that have worked at the state level, or the federal lands that exist in waters where regulation makes it harder to lease on federal lands to be able to grow the economy. Regulations need to be fixed, and that gets us close to the 4% growth scenario. But we need to embrace the energy revolution as well. We have it in our midst, and if we did those three things, so here's what I believe. I think we need to lift the ban on crude oil exports. It was designed in 1973 during a time when we had an oil embargo. It might have made sense then. I'm not sure it did. It makes no sense now. We've had 4 million barrels per day of additional production. We should sell that to the world for national security purposes, for lower prices for us, and for greater high-wage jobs in this country. Lift that ban. It makes no sense. Lift the ban as it relates to LNG exports. If it's not a free trading country, it takes almost an act of God to get a permit. There's gas right underneath where we are, ready to be exported. It could be used as a national security tool to deal with Putin. It also creates high-wage jobs in this country and lowers energy costs if we're continuing to invest in our future. And so the first step is to lessen the barrier so that we can produce more. Secondly, we need to create the infrastructure to get this gas to market. Whether it's in New England where you have subsidized fuel oil, heavy carbon-intensive fuel oil at a higher price, that if you allowed the infrastructure to get to market, you'd be able to have hundreds of thousands of cubic feet of gas be provided to people that wouldn't need to be subsidized at a lower price, less carbon intensive, by the way, and creating jobs right here. Or the infrastructure that's necessary to get to the industrial heartline or to the refining capacity in the Gulf Coast. Let's unleash the American experience on permitting so that we can expedite permitting to be able to create far greater demand. We do not have a supply problem in our energy sector, do we? We've got a demand problem because of the lack of infrastructure. As president, I would expedite permitting to make that happen. And as president, I would approve the XL pipeline, for crying out loud. That is the lowest hanging fruit I've ever imagined. Let me get this straight. The XL pipeline's bad because I'm kind of thinking why. Well, it creates jobs in America. It connects us to North America to create a North American energy strategy. That doesn't seem like a bad idea. It's safer to come by pipeline rather than by train, right? It creates lower energy prices and allows the United States to be the pricer of crude oil rather than have those exports go either east or west rather than coming south. It creates jobs here and it creates income here. It seems like it's a pretty good idea. But the radical environmentalists in this country are not allowing Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama to do what they know is the right thing to do. Well, I won't be pressured. I will support the XL pipeline, and it'll make sense for our country and it'll create jobs here. Leases on federal lands and federal waters has declined by about 40%. Even though there's great potential, we know it to be true. And these revenues go to lower the budget deficit, which is still a problem in Washington, D.C. I will make sure that the Bureau of Land Management and the other agencies that are stopping progress on leasing lands will know that the next president wants them to do it in the right way. You can always find the proper balance between the environmental good, the environmental necessities, and economic progress. And that should be the objective of the next administration, to allow us to invest in our own dreams and also protect the natural environment. I did it as governor of the state of Florida. We can balance economic interests and environmental progress. But don't stifle it because you're upset that American entrepreneurialism, American exceptionalism has created a booming energy sector that you don't like because you want to be able to pick the winners and losers out from Washington, D.C. and impose your will on the rest of the country. That's not how America works. America works far better from the bottom up rather than the top down. Let's unleash this entrepreneurial spirit and use the federal lands, and I will promise you that I will do that as well. The final suggestion I have is that there should be greater deference to the states. In this world where everything is, all the smart people apparently in the age of Obama reside in Washington, D.C., the rest of us are just kind of in awe of their raw intelligence and their great capability to tell us how we're supposed to live our lives. We need to turn that upside down. And the states should have greater deference. If Virginia wants to allow federal waters off their coast to be able to develop that because they believe that will help them grow their economy, then there should be some deference and recognition that Virginians know what's going on. They don't want to destroy their beaches and their natural environment. There's a way to find common ground. If Alaska wants to do the same thing, then there should be some deference rather than imposing the will from Washington, D.C. When I'm elected president, the political hacks and the academics are going to take the back seat. The people that are going to be making these decisions actually might have practical experience in the real world. I apologize, but I think that is the best thing to do. So here's my aspiration. I believe we can create 1 million 21st century manufacturing jobs with the lowest, most abundant source of energy in the world. I believe we can continue to give the middle class of this country the greatest break they've had in the last 6 years, which are lower gasoline prices and lower power generation utility prices, because that's the only good deal that they've had in the last 6.5 years. And we can continue to do that in a way that liberates the oil and gas producers to be able to provide a continued source of abundant, low-cost energy. I believe we can outcompete any country in the world, including China. I reject the notion that we're in decline as a nation. But we have to fix these big, complex things, and if we do, our economy will grow at 4%. And we'll do it in a way that will create security for the country. The one beautiful thing about a proper energy strategy is it also is a defense of the homeland. There are great threats in this world right now, whether it's Russia trying to dominate Europe by using its energy to blackmail the Baltics or the Eastern European or even Western European countries, or the sea lanes being challenged in the South China Seas. The United States needs to be strong. And the strong America means we have to grow our economy at a far faster rate and be energy and food secure. If we have food security and energy security, no one will be able to outcompete the greatest country on the face of the earth. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Okay. Jeb, me, Toby, and Derek and Ryan, we sat down last night and they said you can ask them a couple questions. So me, Toby, Derek, and Ryan each have our own question, but I'm gonna ask them on behalf of all four of us.
I think Rossenberger's going to come back pretty quick. Is that the question?
Yeah. Okay, so the first question. Several years ago, we were a small business starting in Pittsburgh. So as we look at small businesses today, how do your policies help grow small businesses in America?
So, small businesses actually in America, for the first time in recorded history, they may have happened in the 17th century or 16th century, back up where you guys came from, up in New England. You know, there may have been a time where there were businesses closed, more businesses closing than opening, but that's what it is in America today. It's tragic. I mean, this country has led the world because we're dynamic and we're, you know, the world doesn't work like in a planned way in America. We don't plan it all out real well. We respond to opportunity. And that's how we succeed. We're a 10 steps forward, 5 steps back, 3 steps forward, 5 steps back, 10 steps forward country. We're not a boom, boom, you know, we're not just march and be told what to do and fill out the right form and get in line and do all this stuff. We're totally horrible at that. And the small business sector is the one that's been hurt by all of these rules on top of every aspect of human endeavor. It starts in Washington, but frankly, some states have also imposed major rules on top of everything. I mean, to start a business in California, you got to pay $800 to start with, and then you got to do it again and again every year. Well, if you got a business with $10,000 and you're pursuing your dream, yours probably was a little bit more when you started. But a lot of businesses start with borrowing money from, you know, crazy Uncle Harry, and he gives you 10 grand, and you're out just killing it, trying to do your best. And if you have to pay $800 for an occupational license fee or tax, and then you got to pay another tax, and you got to pay the excuse me for living tax, and then you got to go to Washington and you have higher health care costs because of Obamacare and the system we have. You add it all up, and small businesses don't have the lobbyists, do they? They don't have the accountants. They don't have the compliance officers. You guys are just starting to learn about this as a public company, and it makes it harder. Scale is not the definition of a successful business, and it shouldn't be. But in fact, in America, it is becoming more and more that way. The incumbents don't mind when Dodd-Frank imposes all sorts of rules on every borrower. They don't care because the big banks can basically share those costs over a gigantic asset base. But there's only been 2 banks formed in the last 6 years in America. 2 new banks. There's a reason for that. And so decomplicating life, shifting regulation away from Washington to the state level, recognizing that there should be an economic benefit for every rule that is imposed. I believe we ought to have a regulatory budget in Washington. So if you create a real budget, this is what the UK has done. Every dollar of additional costs, in my mind, there ought to be a dollar of some place where there's savings in the regulation. You should have no increase in regulation, and we ought to have a sunset review of all rules to have a spring house cleaning, to be able to shed some of the rules that might have made sense 30 or 40 years ago. So and then putting men and women in positions of responsibility that actually understand the business, the industry that they're regulating, and don't have a political agenda, that actually want to have a balanced view between protecting the water or the air or the workforce environment and the economic impacts that businesses bring. Bringing common sense to Washington in this regard would be helpful. Look, I'm 62 years old. I know I look a lot younger than that, right? You told me I was charismatic and good looking or something. Yeah. So here's the deal. I was governor for 8 years where we did all this stuff. And we led the nation in small business growth for 8 years. We created 1.3 million net new jobs during those 8 years, even though the government shrunk by 13,000. We cut taxes by $19 billion. We created a field of dreams, and people pursued their dreams in Florida more than other places because of it. But I've been in the private sector for 33 years and in government for 9. And the practical private sector experience is what I want to bring to Washington, D.C., of starting a business with 3 people and growing it to the largest full-service commercial real estate company in South Florida to 280 people before they kicked me out the door. That experience is the one that I think is more relevant in many ways about what's wrong with Washington. They only hang out with the big dogs. They hang out with the big companies. They hang out and interact with their lobbyists and with their lawyers and their accountants. And the small businesses don't have access to that, and they're being hurt by all of this. That's all I got.
Good answer. Okay. This question's from Derek. Derek's the pessimist in the Rice family. So Derek gets how exporting more American energy is good for companies like Rice Energy, but how does it affect America's role in the world?
Well, it actually is good for consumers. It may sound counterintuitive. You export crude. Some people say we should hoard it. And the net result of that is refiners actually get higher margins and gasoline prices are higher. Exporting crude actually lowers costs at home. It may seem counterintuitive, but if you talk to the experts, they'll tell you unanimously that that's the case. So it's good for consumers. It's good for people working, because every time you create a new market for your product, whether it's gas or liquids or oil, you're creating an opportunity to grow your business, right? And invest in your own business. And that creates economic opportunity for the employees of Rice Energy and for all of the suppliers of Rice Energy. This community, and for the landowners that are leasing you the properties, and they're buying pickup trucks thanks to those royalty checks, aren't they? They're being able to provide for their child's education. They're saving their money so that their kid could go to the university of their choice. They're doing all sorts of things that they want to do rather than being told what they should do. So there's a vitality to this that helps not just the business, but the entire community in which they're serving. And frankly, it also is a national security issue. So it's going to get cold here pretty soon. Not here, but in Estonia, and in Poland, and in Germany, and in Romania. And if you look at the heating necessities of Europe, it gets really cold there. Where do they get their gas? By and large, they get it from the Russians. And they're basically held hostage, and they can be blackmailed. Gazprom can raise their prices whenever they want, and they've done it. Ask the Ukraine people what it's like to live through a winter with Russia being your sole source of supply. Why not use it as a national security tool to be able to export LNG to be an alternative to Russian natural gas? It's cheaper, it's cleaner. If you're interested in the environment, our natural gas is significantly less carbon intensive than the Russian natural gas. We're much more committed to protecting the environment. So we're exporting a cleaner energy source, but more importantly, it's in our national security interest to show resolve against Russia, to show support for the NATO allies, because when we need them, they're not going to be there if we're not there on their side. We should have a north-south corridor from Poland down to Eastern Europe, using American natural gas as a source of our foreign policy tools. And the same applies as it relates to Asia. There's no reason why this can't be an effective tool for us to re-engage with the world. This is a wonderful intersection of high-wage, high-growth, high-job growth economies, where we benefit because we're energy secure, where we lower our energy prices and we use it as a tool for our national security around the world. I can't think of a better deal than what we're going through right now. We're just not exploiting it to the fullest extent possible. Look at this guy right here. That's a heck of a picture right there.
Okay, the
You're
third
taking
question.
a picture of them taking pictures of me?
Okay, the third question's coming from the more sensitive brother, the youngest one, Ryan.
Ryan, he's an Aggie. How can he be sensitive?
Yeah. So Ryan's question is, how would your reform plan...
Hey, Ryan.
Hug it out.
My dad's an Aggie. Also, I'm an Aggie.
Okay.
He's an Aggie. I went to the University of Texas, but frankly, in our family now, because my dad's library is at Texas A&M University, and they love him there, I'm an Aggie too. That's why I gave him a warm embrace.
So Ryan's question is how would your reform plan for federal government regulations affect energy workers and their families here in Pennsylvania?
Every dollar of reduction of a rule that creates economic benefit and achieves the social good. I'm not suggesting unregulating the world. What I'm suggesting is common sense 21st century rules rather than the complex 20th century rules allow progress to go forward, which means more money in your pocket, plain and simple. That's it. Every dollar that we extract from cost of making, creating possibilities for workers and businesses creates money in people's pockets. And we haven't had that. We've had 6 million more people in poverty, and we have declining income for the great middle of this country. Disposable median income is down $2,000 since the day that Barack Obama got elected president. And it's because of the massive uncertainty and the confusing rules and the costs of the rules that businesses have to share with their workers. That's it. It's plain and simple. Same with health care. Every time you create a well-intended idea of Obamacare is well-intended, I'm sure, but the simple fact is it imposes costs on businesses that then force businesses to make employees have to share more in the health care costs. And you see it happening with higher deductibles, higher co-pays, more cost to employees. That means your take-home pay ultimately is going down. So the best kind of rules are the ones that protect whatever it is you're trying to protect, but at the lowest possible cost so that people have money in their pockets. Let me give you an example, because I know your success makes environmentalists miserable. Not the common sense environmentalists, but the radical ones. They don't like it. And it makes no sense to me, because a growing economy allows us to spend money on protecting wild America. When our economy in Florida grew by 4.4% per year, we generated revenue that allow us to have the largest land purchasing programs in the country to protect pristine Florida. We began the process of seriously trying to restore the Everglades, an incredible treasure for our country. We focused on cleaning up water bodies, not just the Everglades, but others. If we were growing at the tepid rate of the economy today, we wouldn't have the resources to be able to protect the natural environment. And so there has to be a win-win. And that's what we need to get to, is common sense regulation, and not this kind of, finger licking, making people feel like they're doing something bad, when in fact you've created 300 plus jobs above the median income of a community. All of the suppliers that are dependent upon your business now love you too. You're creating wealth and prosperity for yourselves, but for hundreds, if not thousands, of other people as well. That's the American way. We should be celebrating. Where's the marching band, for crying out loud? This is what we should be doing. They all have stock. Employees? Yeah. Every single one. Yeah. And I hope your stock price goes up too.
Thank you.
Because that's American capitalism right at its best. It's not owned by one or two people. It's shared by everybody. Everybody's interest is aligned the right way. Praise Jesus. I get fired up when I see examples like this, because this is what separates us from the rest of the world. One other point about how we should be proud of this country. There are places where shale exists in other parts of the world, right? I mean, it's all over. Argentina has a massive potential shale play. The Russians have it. The Poles and the Germans and the UK, the Brits have shale plays. Where else other than the United States has it worked? Nowhere. It's only in America. And why is that? A, we risk more. We take risks. We just have a culture of risk-taking. Not crazy risks, but risks that really allows you to move forward. B, we have private property rights embedded in who we are. It's in our DNA. We were watching the men and women that do the leasing for the business. That's a robust market that only exists in America. Only in America do private landowners own the subsurface rights to the extent they do in this country, and that creates a dynamic energy sector, because as prices go down, prices go down, and you create opportunities that you guys take advantage of. It's uniquely American. It's uniquely America to have trial and error, to try something and then it doesn't work, but adjust and make it more dynamic. The costs of your production have dropped by what in the last 3 or 4 years? 50%. I mean, where else in the world do you get this kind of dynamic response? We should stop trying to default to getting in line and being told by Washington, D.C. what to do, and embrace who we are. This is what makes America so extraordinary and so special. And this is why I'm totally convinced we can grow at 4%. We just have to unleash the animal spirits in Americans, and we will be America renewed again. Preach. I feel like I'm at the pulpit.
So my last
like
question.
a tent revival meeting.
So the last question is on that last point you made about the 4% growth. So right now the economy is growing at 2%. You say it can grow at 4%. Why do you think that can be done?
Because it has in the past. So past can be prologue, but you got to have the right policies. If you impose all these rules on top of every aspect of business, you're not going to grow at 2%. If you have the most convoluted tax code in the world, you're not going to grow at 2%. I'll give you an example. We have a new phenomena called inversions. And this is a reality because of our tax code. A small foreign business buys large U.S. business to consolidate their activities in that other country because their corporate tax rates are lower. We have the highest tax rates in the industrialized world. And the net effect of this is we lose job and the government loses revenue and people lose income. And all the communities in which these businesses operate have a diminished partner, if you will, for the florists and all the other people that depend on these large businesses in the communities. They lose part of their economic vitality. Well, in my tax proposal, I've said, and it's because we have worldwide income as kind of our driver. Where's the CFO? Nod your head if I'm correct. Okay. So we have worldwide, our companies are taxed on worldwide income. There's $2 trillion of cash overseas that doesn't come back because it will be taxed at an onerous rate. What I've proposed is an 8.75% rate for that money to come back. $2 trillion could come back. And to move back to a territorial source of taxation, which every other country has. If you did that, you would have hundreds of billions of dollars invested in enterprises all across this country, creating higher wage jobs. If you fully capitalize all capital investment in the first year, you're going to have an explosion of productivity. And we're rebalancing from Wall Street to Main Street, in effect. We're leveling out the playing field so that the heartland of our country and the industrial side of our economy will begin to grow and prosper. Everybody else does better when that happens. So fixing our tax code, fixing the regulatory system, embracing the energy revolution in our midst, as you all have heard today, fixing a broken immigration system that right now is a drain on our economy that could be a huge catalyst for high sustained economic growth. If we narrowed the number, if we enforced the rule of law, protected our borders, made it clear that coming here legally is easier than coming here illegally, and then picked who we wanted to have as new Americans, you would grow the economy at a far faster rate. There's no doubt about that. And then dealing with the structural deficit problems that relate to our entitlement challenges. We need to preserve and protect our entitlements for those that have them, but we need to make sure that we reform the whole system so that the next generation can achieve it. You'll grow at 4% as far as the eye can see, and we'll lead the world. We'll be, as we are, we'll lead the world. I mean, I'll close with this. A simple exercise, because I know people are deeply pessimistic about the future of the country, and they listen to politicians on the left and right talk about how bad things are. You know, you need therapy probably at the end of some of these debates. Here's the deal. If we opened up the entire world and said, you got 30 days, one-way ticket, you can pick where you want to live. I wonder who would win that. We would win it. We'd win it going away. We'd win it 1,000 to 1. We win it because this country is still the beacon of freedom. This is the hope for the world. This is the greatest country on the face of the earth. And if we start acting like it, we will be it. It's that simple, and that's what I believe. So thank you all very much. Continued success. We love you very much. Thank you, man. Thanks so much. Thanks.
And there is the Jeb Bush event wrapping up. Hello.
Hi.
Look who I have here for a nice 12:40 start here. Happy Tuesday.
I'm excited to be back.
Yeah, you were gone for a little bit, Kinsey. How was vacay?
I was enjoying low gas prices.
There you
Just
go.
kidding.
Well, gas prices, that's what we're going to be talking about. They're saying that it's going to continue to get lower.
And you know what? I like to attribute that to your hire.
Okay. Yeah,
Everything
see?
gets better.
Everything gets better when
you're
Mikey's here.
Yes.
So we'll talk about that, and then right after the gas price story, they go right into when's the best time to get these airline tickets for Thanksgiving and see your family and friends.
Oh wow. Well, that's almost like us saying monsoon season's over. It always changes. Monsoon season's over. Monsoon.
Yes.
Oh wait, just kidding. We've got a few more monsoons in us. I feel like gas prices, it's always a gamble.
Oh yeah, it is.
And
it's
or not
roulette.
Gas prices,
It's roulette.
Airline flights. It's always a gamble.
It is.
You know, you get an email from Expedia one day saying, "Congratulations, we've got a great deal here," and then Travelocity sends you an email 3 days
I
later
know.
with an even better deal.
I know.
So I just think you go with your gut on this on flights.
Somebody was saying on here a little bit earlier that they believe that it's Tuesday when you leave, Monday you come back for the best deals.
Oh.
I hope in this report it's something different.
I hope that they're that specific in this report, if that's the case. I mean,
Yeah, I
think
wanted an exact
I do believe
date.
that there is some science behind it. You know, don't leave on a Friday. I'm sure that there's some science there. So.
Do you have to travel for Thanksgiving, or do you get to stay local here?
My family's
They're all
here. But I have a really handsome person that I'm seeing right now that has family in Texas.
Oh, so
perhaps I'll go to Texas. I don't know.
Yeah, see, that's always interesting when where are you going to celebrate then when you have a significant other then?
That's true. Or I'll just go to hang out with you.
Yeah, there you go.
Are you gonna leave?
No, I'm going to go probably Sedona, grandparents.
Okay. My mom is very concerned with the fact that you don't have family here. And
Oh,
so my
see?
mom wants you to come over if you don't have anyone.
Wow, look how nice that is. I appreciate that.
My mom's like, he's not from here. We need to make sure he's taken care of.
Yeah, what if I was like, I'm actually going to do nothing?
Yeah, well, if you're actually going to do
No.
nothing, then come party with us.
There we go.
We have turducken.
Oh, I've never had that.
It'll change your life.
Is it amazing?
It's
How many years have you done that now?
Oh, for as long as I can remember.
Is it so moist?
It's just delicious.
So for people that don't know, so what we have a duck,
Yes.
and then it's stuffed into a chicken.
And there's like little baby shrimps in it and all sorts of deliciousness.
Wow.
It's a party. It's a party on its own.
Yeah.
If that's all I had, no. I like honey baked ham too. But if that's all I had, but no, I believe that this is if you are a person that is serious about lower deals, and investigating the. Hi, I missed you too. I missed you. If you are a person that sits on the internet and is always hunting those deals, and I'm more of a I'm hunting deals on clothing.
Yep.
I'm a last minute purchaser when it comes to my plane tickets
Okay.
every time.
Like
but
how close do you get to your? Do you do pretty
I left
close?
for New York on Sunday night, and I bought my tickets the Wednesday before.
Wow.
And I'd known I was going to New York for like 2 months.
Now, was it higher or was it still pretty?
It was $500. I don't know how much a ticket to New York normally is. But
Yeah.
I'm a very last minute person.
A lot of people are talking about this turducken. Look at this. That was like the keyword of the day.
I bring the good topics.
You got to show some. When we get closer to Thanksgiving, you got to show some past pictures.
I can do that, or I can bring some in.
Wow.
I'm willing to do that for you.
See?
Taste tests.
Yeah.
We don't do enough of that here on FOX10 News Now.
No. Look at this.
Tess buys her plane tickets 6 weeks before. You're so much more.
That's on
prepared
top
than
of
I
it.
am.
That's really on top.
Oh yeah. Well, and
Well,
Arabelle is still on the topic of delicious.
See,
love for the
we
holidays.
got a couple topics already going, but let's show this gas price story.
Sure.
Things are going real down,
And did
then
you say this is Ty Brennan?
yes. Well, Ty Brennan has the second part of the story.
All right. Well, as long as
For
I
airline.
get to see my Ty Brennan.
Yes, because he was on the morning today. Here we go.
All right, gas prices, and if you've
filled up in the last couple of days, you probably noticed it was a little less money to do
$23.
so. That's it? 23 for your car?
One thing I noticed is newer cars have smaller gas tanks.
Oh, that's
because they're trying to achieve, mileage.
maximum, yeah.
So,
okay.
the gas doesn't last as long in my tank as the old car I had before I got in that terrible accident.
I know.
And anyway.
Well,
23, but I don't know how many gallons. I should check.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, new numbers from Gas Buddy show that gas prices in Phoenix has fallen 6 cents per gallon in the past week. So we're averaging about $2.26 a gallon right now.
The national average here. Okay.
There we go.
National average is $2.29 a gallon.
Yep.
Now they say that by Christmas we're going to be at $1.95 a gallon.
Wow.
That's
Under
less than
$2?
$2.
That's pretty good.
In Houston, I checked before we went on the air.
Yeah.
In Houston, it's like under $1.80. It's like $1.75.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if Houston is because they're closer to refineries or
Could
whatnot.
be. We called the analysts at Gas Buddy this morning and asked what's the lowest price. They're the ones actually that gave us this projected price by Christmas time. Gas prices are almost $1 lower right now than they were this time last year. Just under $1, about 96.3 cents. So California.
Look at this. This is
know,
crazy.
I know.
California's statewide average is $2.99. Now this is the first time below $3 since February, and signs show that the price will go lower. 3 years ago, the average cost of gasoline per gallon, $4.67.
Wow.
I've seen it. Now see, that's
I've seen it
regular,
even
and then
higher than
like premiums like over $5.
Oh yeah. So they say the cause for the lower prices, cheaper winter blend coming into supply. Well, we'll take it.
Okay, let's face it. What is oil selling for now? I mean, it's pretty cheap.
Yeah,
I
it
haven't
is pretty
checked
cheap.
lately.
The gas station, I always seem to check this one coming in at 7th Avenue and Roosevelt, $2.15 a gallon. Pretty good, right?
Yeah, if you risk your life to go there. Well, one day I was driving to work and there was a body there. Okay.
Well, I know. We talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
I go there in the middle of the day
Okay,
versus
that's good.
early in the morning or late at night. But anyway.
Well, if you're planning to fly for Thanksgiving, Christmas, or New Year's, you should buy your tickets in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, Ty's at the airport with the best days to buy the holiday fares. What you got for us?
Yeah, good morning, you guys. It's hard to believe that we're already talking about holiday airfare, but believe it or not, this is right around the corner. And according to Orbitz, they say the best time to start booking their airfare is next month, beginning in October. So we've broken this all down for you. So let's say that you want to go out of town for Thanksgiving. They say the best date to purchase a ticket for Thanksgiving is October 6th. The average price of a round-trip ticket will cost you about $406. Orbitz explains that last year, many people booked their Thanksgiving Day airfare by September 20th. This caused a spike in prices. So by mid-October, you can expect that airfare will be more expensive. All right, what about Christmas? A lot of people like to travel away for Christmas. So they say October 9th is the best time to purchase tickets for the Christmas holiday. Round-trip tickets, about $428. And if that's too soon for you, prices are also expected to dip on November 6th and November 7th. Okay, how about this? If you want to ring in the new year in some exotic locale, the best day to book New Year's travel, October 10th. That's when the average round-trip ticket will be about $362. Not bad. Orbit says last year, most people didn't book New Year's Eve travel until November, so they said get in ahead of the crowds to get the best savings. So there you go. We've broken it all down for you to find the best time to travel.
All right. Well, I don't have any travel
I'm going to go
plans,
find a ticket.
Okay.
But you're going to go get a ticket. Okay, we'll go.
You need a boarding pass to get past that area there.
All right, gas prices.
All right, there you go. So that was very interesting to see some of the gas prices that looks like it's going to be going down by Christmas time. We're going to see some cheap gas prices, hopefully, thanks to that winter blend. That could be a nice little Christmas present right there. I think everyone would enjoy. Another topic that I'd like to get to today is the heat. Are you guys kidding me, right? Our social media department put together a great graphic that I want to show to you, and then we'll show some of these comments here, but let me bring it on over so you can see it. And it's just so crazy with this heat, though, that we got going. Look at this right now. It's called hashtag sick of it. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you are looking at the highs. 104, 105, and 105. My question to you is, are you hashtag sick of it? Let me know. We do have some fun responses from people. And if you'd like to have your own response here, you could always go onto our FOX10 Facebook page, where you're going to see this great little graphic here. One person says, anything under 106 I can handle. So it's more like hashtag used to it and hashtag AZ problems. Billy says right here in our chat, he says, I never minded the heat until it was over 115 when I lived there. Yeah, when it gets to be that 115, it is brutal. I know what you guys are thinking when it comes to that. Any other, what else are you guys thinking about this heat, though? It's a little, we're getting close to October. It's going to be October this weekend, and we're just dealing with these crazy temperatures. Maribel is just also hashtag sick of it. Let's get some more comments here. You could read them right here. Look at this. People, there were so many people that commented on our Facebook page. Jill says, I miss Phoenix. It's a beautiful place. Nikki says, I too survived the 122 degree heats. We're going to read some more. Kevin says, I'll take 105 degrees and sun over shoveling snow any day. I can relate to that. Coming from Chicago, our winters are just horrible. And you're right, you cannot shovel sunshine. So that's a very interesting take on that. Let's continue on for a couple more here. As you're reading some. Pamela, a good one right here. I have moved to hell. She's not too happy with this heat right now. What would you guys say to Pamela? Say get used to it, or we feel ya? Let me know on that one. Mike says the heat doesn't bother me. I'm one of the few people who will say that, and I enjoy the heat. So comment on that section if you guys are feeling one way or the other. We always love to hear from you. And I just wanted to talk about that Arizona heat for a little bit, because boy, oh boy, does it sometimes just get really hot. And I mean, we're dealing with 105s, and it's almost October. Take a look at that. Once again, our great social media department put together that awesome graphic. It's going to get over 1,000 shares pretty soon, so well on its way. Billy says the humidity of the monsoon season is the bad part. I would agree. All right, let's get back to it. Just wanted to get a little heat conversation going. Coming up on 1 o'clock. We're just 7 minutes away. Samia will be back at 2:30. I will. Oh, you're on 1:30? Oh, yeah? See you guys? No, didn't I always... Oh, yeah? So, okay. We're having a little off-topic conversation, me, Samia, and Kinsey there. Always fun stuff. I do, guys, want to show you this story that I think everyone is going to enjoy. It's the wiener dog races in Washington. Very...
We're here to do the wiener dog races in order to support the rescue for wiener dogs.
We try to come to as many of the functions that they have to support the rescue and to encourage other wiener dog owners to do the same.
So do you think your dog is going to win? He's pretty spunky. He's pretty good. He's got these fast little long legs.
He looks pretty nervous, doesn't he? I think he's a little overwhelmed. He's never done this before.
Probably a little overweight.
We have really low expectations.
He loves the tennis ball and the tennis racket. So that's
I'm
what
doing it at
we
one.
used to coax him to get down there to the finish line, and it worked.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Wiener dogs are a lot of fun. Go Wieners!
Go Wieners! Go Wieners! Guys, I also want to show you this story coming out of California.
So, my name is Jenny, and I deal with negative body image.
Genevieve Zuniga is like many 16-year-old girls.
I have kind of always struggled with negative body image, and I mean, I've weighed 120, and I've weighed 160, and I've weighed 190, and no matter what I weigh, I've always dealt with that.
But unlike other teenage girls, Zuniga decided to create a video about body positivity and self-love.
I just felt like it really needed to be said. I know a lot of people who also deal with it. It's a really common thing to deal with.
She tells me at first she wasn't going to share it, but then decided to post it to her Facebook page. It was then shared by the Bully Project, a social action campaign aimed at stopping bullying in kids' lives. The video has since had 1.7 million views, reaching people all around the world.
I've had people message me from Canada, Egypt, Pakistan, England, Turkey, everywhere. Israel.
She says hundreds of people have been messaging her, thanking her for the inspiring video. Zuniga says the video was a way for her to look back at how far she has come.
Over the last few months, I have sort of, like the video says, surrounded myself with hope and love and support and all of that. And that has really changed my life.
All right, so that was a very interesting story. We're coming up on 1 o'clock here. One person that we really haven't heard from too much in the GOP race is Christie. But don't worry, we do have an event from him from Iowa, so we will be going to that very shortly. Hope everyone is having a great Tuesday afternoon. It's almost 1 o'clock, and as you just seen a couple segments ago, the heat is on. Almost to October, and it's going to be about 105 today. Dave Muncy again will be once again in, and tomorrow is a very special day for Dave Muncy. 40 years on the air. So we're going to have a awesome celebration for Dave tomorrow. It's going to be a great celebration as he is celebrating 40 years on the air. You got to love that. Let me set this up for you guys so we can get to Christie in Iowa. All right, guys, here we go.
6%. America's moving in the wrong direction. But lastly, and most importantly, you need to have a leader once again who's going to look you in the eye and tell you exactly what they think, and have the experience to be able to take what they think and put it into action. So whether it's on taxes, where Americans for Tax Reform 2 weeks ago said, I've vetoed more tax increases than any governor in American history. Now, I can't take credit for that myself all alone. I needed a Democratic liberal legislature to send me all those tax increases to veto. But we vetoed them, and we stood up and we let people know that we're not going to allow taxes to increase in this country when people are already overtaxed. I've vetoed more than 400 bills already as governor of New Jersey. That's more in 5.5 years than any governor of New Jersey has vetoed in 8 years. And every one of those vetoes has been sustained. They've tried 52 times to override me, and they're over 52. Well, what's that mean and why is it important to you? That means that I've been able to unite our Republican Party in New Jersey, to stand up for those principles, not to splinter off, but to stand together when we believe in something. We need someone to unite our party again. All we need to do is look at Congress and see how dysfunctional and divided it is. We need a strong president who knows how to keep Republicans together. But lastly, I wake up every morning with a Democratic majority in both houses of the legislature, and I've woken up that way every day as governor. And that means I wake up every morning knowing I'm not going to get everything I want. And that the people of New Jersey, in their infinite wisdom, have now twice elected a conservative Republican governor and a liberal Democratic legislature. They're like the 13-year-old kid in the basement doing a science experiment, saying, let's mix these two things together and see what'll happen. The fact is that that's their choice. And as governor, it's not an option for me to stand in the corner and hold my breath and do nothing. It's my job to reach out and make it work, and that's why we've reformed teacher tenure with a Democratic legislature. We reformed the pension and benefit system with a Democratic legislature. We've capped our property taxes with a Democratic legislature. We've reduced the payroll by 15% with a Democratic legislature. That doesn't happen without knowing how to reach across the aisle and to work with the other side. Compromise, everybody, is not capitulation. They're two different words. And they're two different words for a reason. And so, yes, I've compromised where I thought it was necessary to compromise to make progress for the people in my state. And I have stood my ground and vetoed bad ideas when I thought that giving in would move our state backwards. It seems to me we need the same kind of approach in Washington, D.C. A president who's strong and tough, and people say lots of things about me, but they never say I'm misunderstood. And I won't be misunderstood in Washington, D.C. And I will bring people together. Our party to be united for a set of principles that we're going to move on and execute. And from day one to reach out to the other side to make sure they understand, that I understand, that the American people have made them an important part of governing, and that their voice needs to be heard as well. And we will work together to make sure that we move this country forward. So, I had a reporter ask me yesterday, how did I feel? Because her impression was that 4 years ago, these gentlemen were chasing me. And that 4 years later, I was chasing them. And how'd that make me feel? Did that make me feel weaker? And I said, I don't know. I have a pretty realistic attitude about this stuff. I don't really care who chases who as long as we wind up being married. And today's the ceremony, and I'm glad that this is where we landed up and where we landed. And you're going to see the results of this marriage and other marriages that Mary Pat and I are making here in Iowa with the people of Iowa, to remind them that strong leadership is the thing that makes the biggest difference in the direction of our country. And that's the kind of leadership that I intend to bring to our party as its nominee and to our country as its president. So I want to thank Bruce and Denny and Mike, and Jim, and the other folks who aren't here today, Gary and Mike as well, for their willingness to stand up and speak their mind, and to do so at a time when it really matters, where we can build on this to build a strong organization here in Iowa that will perform extraordinarily well in the caucuses come February. So I thank all of them for their support, their faith and trust and confidence in me and Mary Pat, and we're going to give them exactly the kind of campaign that faith and trust and confidence warrants. So understand we're going to take some questions from the press as well, so I'm always happy to do that. So let's take some questions, but once again, thank you to the gentleman standing up here for making today happen. It's a really important day for this campaign, and it's going to be an important day for our country going forward. So thank you guys very, very much for your support.
Some high-profile incidents in your administration in the last 4 years. Is there any sense in which you regret not having run run 4 years ago, and are those things going to work against you this time?
I don't have any regrets for not running 4 years ago. And here's the better news. The American people should have no regrets that I didn't run 4 years ago. I wasn't ready. And that was the way I made the decision. I understood the political opportunity. There was an enormous political opportunity there for me to run. When you have folks like this who are willing to help and support you, and many others across the country, there was enormous political opportunity. But you have to believe in here, and you have to be able to look in the mirror and know that you're ready to be President of the United States. The only thing worse than running for President of the United States and losing would be running for the President of the United States and winning when you're not ready to be President. The country deserves better. And I decided that Mitt Romney was much more ready to be President of the United States 4 years ago than I was. And I not only didn't run, but then I turned around immediately, a week later, and supported him. And I'm proud to have supported him. And I think this country would be a lot better off today if Mitt Romney were President of the United States than what we have right now, and I'm proud of what I did. And everything that's happened in my governorship over the last 6 years, good and bad, has made me better prepared to be President of the United States. In case you haven't noticed, presidencies don't always go completely smoothly either. The real test of a leader is not that everything goes perfectly, because it never will. The real test of a leader is when things do go wrong, how do you react and respond? And I'm proud of what I've done over the course of time in reacting and responding to challenges, whether those challenges be man-made and internal inside administration, or whether they be natural disasters like having to deal with Hurricane Sandy. All those things have tested me and made me a better leader, made me a better governor, and will make me a better president. So, yeah, no, I have no regrets at all. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk about what you had to do to woo these guys this time? Obviously, it's a very crowded field.
Flowers, candy, wine, you know, all the traditional wooing techniques. Now, listen, this is no different than what I've been saying all along to folks here. Campaigns matter. They matter. How you conduct yourself, what ideas you put forward, how accessible you make yourself. You know, in the end, that's the way folks judge which candidate do they want to support. If campaigns didn't matter, we wouldn't have them. We would just have everybody announce, and then the next day, like the student council election, you know, everybody would vote, and that would be the end of that. That's not what we do electing a president. So I didn't do anything differently than I've done in trying to meet people all across this country and to ask for their support. And it is a great testimony to these gentlemen that they took their time. There were double the number of candidates for them to consider this time as opposed to last time. There was a lot of shopping to do, and I understood that. And patience is a part of this business. But I didn't do anything specifically with these folks that I haven't done before except to sit down like you do with Iowans all across the state. I sat down at a kitchen table with them and spoke to them and answered their questions and came out here and showed the level of commitment I have to competing hard in the caucuses. And that's how I think I've earned their support, that and the record of leadership I've shown in New Jersey, which Bruce talked about in his introduction. So nothing different than that. And, you know, the flower and the candy and all the rest.
Governor,
will this endorsement change the way you campaign here? Will you spend more time in Iowa now?
I was going to spend more time in Iowa anyway, right? Because as the campaign and the election gets closer, you tend to spend more time. But I am completely committed to competing and competing hard here. And you look at...
As much time in New Hampshire as Iowa. Do you think
it's closer. It's closer. And it's early. And now you look at the team that we've put together here in Iowa, and this is an impressive team of people. You look at the group of folks not only standing up here, but the folks that have worked, both been hired by us and who have volunteered to step forward. It's an impressive team. And they have a plan for me to do very well in the Iowa caucuses. And my job is now to execute on that plan. And that means being here. And I will be here, and I'll be here frequently. And I'll be in every important part of this state. So by the time you get to February, you people will be tired of seeing me.
What's the plan?
Oh, I'm not going to tell you. Why would I tell you, for goodness sake? You'll see it play out. It's like you're asking for the end of the movie. We want you to come to the movie and watch it over the next 4 months. Come to the movie and watch. It's going to be a lot of fun. Entertaining, because I'm always entertaining. And we'll do very, very well at the end. Yes, ma'am.
Governor, how do you convince your party grassroots that compromise is not capitulation?
by giving them examples as to why it isn't. And also showing them that this attitude that some folks in Washington, and by the way, it's not restricted just to our party. Democratic Party has the same type of approach. How it's led to the stagnation and the gridlock and the frustration that people feel with government. Our founders came up with a unique and ingenious design. And the very design of our governmental system was to force compromise. Force compromise, not to allow one point of view to dominate over the other. And so we need to get back to talking about what this country is all about and letting people know that progress needs to be made for our children, our grandchildren's future, that we no longer have the luxury of standing in the corner and holding our breath. We have to work together. I've seen that in New Jersey, and that does not mean giving up your core principles. I'm the first pro-life governor since Roe versus Wade in New Jersey's history, and I'm not going to compromise on that point. I have vetoed every tax increase that's come to my desk, and I'm not going to compromise on that point. But there are lots of places where you can work with each other and compromise. But you need to lay out, here are the principled positions I have that I cannot compromise on, and then here's the other area, which is always much broader, of where we can work together and try to make things work for each other. And I don't think it's going to be hard to convince our party that. I think our party understands it. And for those who don't understand it, they're part of the problem, not part of the solution. Yes, Maddie.
You indicated yesterday in New Jersey that you wouldn't support raising the gas tax without other taxes being decreased. If the gas tax were raised in exchange for some taxes going down, would that be in keeping with your pledge not to raise taxes?
Well, first off, everybody took, I read the stories this morning, everybody's jumping to certain conclusions about what I said yesterday. What I said was there wouldn't even be a discussion of anything in New Jersey regarding increased gas tax or anything else unless it represented tax fairness for the people of New Jersey. And that means that overall we need to see taxes reduced in New Jersey. Now, if we're talking about reapportioning revenue to other priorities like transportation infrastructure, all these things are things, as I've said right from the beginning, and so this is nothing new that I said yesterday. I said from the beginning, everything's on the table to be discussed. But I've also said from the beginning, it has to represent tax fairness for the people of New Jersey. And I'm not going to permit this legislature to run roughshod over the people of New Jersey and continue to raise their taxes. I've stood up against that for 6 years, and I'm going to continue to stand up against it. So really, I saw a bunch of stories on it, but I don't think I said anything that's new or different than what I've said before. And so when the legislature finally decides to come back to work after they're done with their campaigning, I'm happy to sit down and talk with the leaders of the legislature, Democrat and Republican, about what we need to do to continue to rebuild infrastructure in our state. But not unless it represents tax fairness for the people of our state. That's what I've stood for my entire time as governor. I'm not going to change now. Matt?
Can anyone behind you talk about what maybe financial support will come with this endorsement?
No.
Will there be any?
Well, listen, we're going to work together. They're part of our team now. And this is not about just one thing or another. It's not just about financial support versus political support versus grassroots support. And, the fact is that the gentlemen standing behind me are now part of our team. And we're all going to work together to try to have as successful a campaign as possible. But I'm certainly not going to subject them to being interrogated about, how much money are they going to raise or something like that. Those are unseemly things, Matthew. We'll work together to try to do what we need to do to have a successful campaign. These folks standing with me today and the others who are not represented on the stage have been a part of some of the most successful Republican campaigns in Iowa history. I had a reporter asked me yesterday, does this mean I'm part of the Branstad wing of the Iowa Republican Party? And I said, well, if by that you mean the winning part, yes, I am. Because Terry Branstad's never lost an election in this state, and if I'm part of the Branstad wing of the party, I'm proud to be part of the Branstad winning wing of the Republican Party in Iowa. That's what these guys have all been about. They've been about winning for Republican candidates, from Terry Branstad and Kim Reynolds to Joni Ernst and many others over time. So I trust that the plan they have for me in Iowa will be one that gives me the potential to do very well here, and it's going to be my job to be here in Iowa and execute on the plan that these folks and the other folks on my staff come up with. I'm a pretty hard worker, and people have gotten to know that about me over time. And I'll be here in Iowa working hard, because that's the only way you do well in the Iowa caucuses, is to be here and to work hard. Yes.
Governor, you met with Governor Branstad this morning, I believe. Are you trying to get his endorsement?
All right, listen, I want everybody's endorsement. I want yours, too. Is that available? I'll meet with you later if you'd like to consider endorsing as well. The fact is, I want everybody's endorsement. And so I would love to have the governor's endorsement. I'd love to have the lieutenant governor's endorsement. I'd love to have Senator Grassley's endorsement and Senator Ernst's endorsement. I'd love to have Congressman Blum's endorsement. There's a lot of people here who I'd love to have their endorsement, and I'm going to work hard to try to get it. But in the end, the endorsement that I want the most are the people who go to the caucuses. Those are the people that I want more than anything else. And that's what I'm going to work to try and get. But everybody in between, everyone who's got a vote in the caucuses in Iowa in February, I want their endorsement. And whether that's public beforehand or just public when they walk into the caucuses and express their preference, I want their endorsement. So I'm going to work hard to get everybody's help here in Iowa. And I won't get everybody's help, but I just need to get enough to do well. And that's exactly what I intend to do.
Two more.
Yes, sir.
Governor, you mentioned Trump and Fiorina earlier. Right now they are leading in polls in Iowa and along with Dr. Carson and elsewhere around the country. Republican voters clearly are expressing a preference for non-politicians, outsiders, folks with no elected experience. Do you anticipate that this preference will fade at a certain point and allow someone like yourself to become the preference of the Republican? And why will that be?
Well, first off, I'm a Republican in New Jersey, which means I wake up every morning as an outsider. You can't be more outside than being a Republican in New Jersey. So I don't cede the outsider mantle to anybody in this race. But secondly, I have no idea what's going to happen, and neither do you or anybody else in this room. That's why we have campaigns. You know, polls right now, you know, and all of you, I'm sure, in Iowa get called, you know, nightly for pollsters, right? And so you know the way they ask that question. If the election were held today, who will you vote for? The way I answer that when pollsters call me is if the election were held today, I'd be shocked, because it's not going to be. And the fact is that we need to let this process work its way through. I have no idea what it's going to look like when we get to the first week of February. But the good news is that's not a shortcoming of mine. No one else knows either. So we're going to work really hard to get there. And all I know is this, that polls this early have been notoriously inaccurate for what's going to ultimately happen, and that Iowans tend to make their decision in the last week or two before the caucuses. So I don't worry about what polls say right now. I mean, you know, if you ask me my preference, would I love to be first? I'll be first in everything. Why not? But the fact is, I'm not at the moment. That's okay. It's time to get to work. I'm going to work hard, and we're going to turn people around. And for people who are undecided, which is the overwhelming majority of people here in Iowa right now, it's time for me to go and make my case. That's my job. I'm going to go make the case. We'll see how we do. Maddie.
Donald Trump released a tax plan yesterday eliminating income taxes for the lowest income Americans, eliminating deductions for the wealthier. He's calling for saying his plan could result in 6% growth. You have a plan. Your plan says 4% economic growth. What do you think of his, and is his plan?
Well, listen, I haven't had an opportunity to really review it. I was traveling yesterday, so I kind of saw what I saw on the internet about it. We put out a plan that's scored, that's smart, that will lead to great opportunity and growth for our country, and we'll have a lot of opportunity to debate the various plans over the course of the next number of months. All I caution people is to remember that anything that you propose as a presidential candidate, you have to be able to deliver on. We've had too many empty promises in this country over time. This Republican Congress has given us a bunch of empty promises. We gave them full control of the Congress back last November, and they promised us they were going to give us tax reform. Have they given it to us? If they put it on the president's desk, if the president wants to veto it, that's his business, and then the American people will know who the obstructionist is. But we haven't even put it on his desk. Have we repealed and replaced Obamacare? No. We should put it on his desk and make him veto it if that's what he's going to do. Should we defund Planned Parenthood? Of course we should. I did it in New Jersey 6 years ago. Yet, we haven't done that. If he wants to veto it, then American people will know where he stands on that issue. We should be having the Congress put these issues on his desk, show what the Republican vision is of America. And then if the president wants to veto it, then that's going to be something that the Democratic nominee is going to have to defend or run away from come the fall election. But instead, our Congress is sitting there doing nothing. So whatever needs to be done has to be realistic to get done. I think our plan is realistic to get done with strong Republican leadership in the White House. And it has to make sure that it doesn't make our current debt situation even worse. And that's why I've put forward a responsible, aggressive entitlement reform plan, and why the tax plan I put forward will not blow a hole in the deficit, but will be responsible in the way we do this. And that's what the American people want. They don't want us adding more trillions onto the 19 trillion in debt we already have for our children and grandchildren. We do not want to be remembered in the history books as the irresponsible generation who only cared about ourselves and didn't care about the welfare of our children and grandchildren. We'll be the first generation in American history to do that if that's what we do. So there's lots of different promises that can be made about things. The ones I put forward have been responsible, have been scored, and make sense. And I'm willing to stand up and defend them against anybody else's plan over the course of the next number of months, and I think we'll do quite well when we do, because the American people look at it and say this is something that not only appeals to them, but they know can be done and won't do damage to the country. And that's important. Yes, ma'am. Are you part of the press? No? I'm only taking questions from the press, but we'll have more town hall meetings, and I'll take some questions from you too, or maybe talk to you afterwards. Any other questions from the press? All right. Well, I want to thank the gentleman standing behind me. We're going to reinvigorate the debate that's going on in Iowa right now in a way that's going to be, I think, very pleasing to the caucus goers. We're going to talk about strong leadership. We're going to talk about how that gets done, not just using words. And governor at that time for only about 17 months. And I was overwhelmed at the time by their faith and confidence in me. And I'm no less overwhelmed today. In fact, in some ways even more so, because they've gotten to watch me now, not for 15 or 16 months, for nearly 6 years, as a leader of my state and as a leader of our party in this country. And I'm so gratified to have the support of each and every one of these gentlemen and the constituencies that they represent here in Iowa and across the country, the ideas and principles that they stand for and have lived in the way they've conducted their lives both personally and professionally. And so Mary Pat and I are thrilled to be here to accept this endorsement and to let all of you know that Iowa is an extraordinarily important state for us. We intend to be here and compete hard for every vote we can in the caucuses, and we intend to do very, very well here with the support of folks like you and others all around Iowa. And here's why. It's not about anything other than what kind of future our children and grandchildren are going to have. I get really frustrated standing up on the stage at the debates at the Reagan Library a couple of weeks back when we had so many of the candidates just standing there talking about themselves and arguing about which of them was more or less successful in pursuits that had absolutely nothing to do with the problems and the opportunities that confront our country and our people. And you know, with 11 people up there, it's kind of hard sometimes to get a word in edgewise, even for me. And finally, I just had to say something. And I want you to know that that's what this campaign is all about. I looked into the camera and said, you know, Mr. Trump and Ms. Fiorina, you know, you can argue all you want about how much money each of you have made and lost, who's gone bankrupt more, who's been a better or a worse CEO, but none of that matters to the 55-year-old construction worker who's sitting at home on his couch trying to figure out how he's going to pay his bills, and worse yet, racked with worry about what kind of world his children are going to be inheriting. And we need to talk about those issues. And those are the issues that I've been talking about in Iowa since I got into this race, and the ones I'm going to continue to talk about. The fact that the first job of the President of the United States is to make sure that the people of the United States are safe and secure. Nothing else, in my opinion, outranks that in terms of the responsibilities of a President of the United States. In an increasingly dangerous, difficult world, we need a President who will send clear and strong signals to our allies that when we say we're with them regardless of whether the polls go up or down for being with them, and to our adversaries that there are limits to our patience, and that if you test those limits, you are testing the most resolute and committed people the world has ever seen in standing up for freedom and liberty in this country. And that at home, we need once again to have an economy and an atmosphere like when Mary Pat and I graduated from college. We graduated in the mid-1980s. And we weren't worried back then about whether we'd get a job. We were just trying to figure out which job we were going to take, which one was the best for our future, the future of our family, the future of our own careers. Yet now we have a son who's a senior in college, and 30 years later, he's worried about getting a job. That's not the kind of America that I want to bequeath to my son, and certainly not the kind of America that we want to bequeath to his children. Yet that's the path we are on. So we need someone who will realistically and directly confront the problems that we have, that we spend 71% of our federal budget on entitlements and debt service, and that 50 years ago it was only 26%. America's moving in the wrong direction. But lastly, and most importantly, you need to have a leader once again who's going to look you in the eye and tell you exactly what they think, and have the experience to be able to take what they think and put it into action. So whether it's on taxes, where Americans for Tax Reform 2 weeks ago said, I've vetoed more tax increases than any governor in American history. Now, I can't take credit for that myself all alone. I needed a Democratic liberal legislature to send me all those tax increases to veto. But we vetoed them, and we stood up and we let people know that we're not going to allow taxes to increase in this country when people are already overtaxed. I've vetoed more than 400 bills already as governor of New Jersey. That's more in 5.5 years than any governor of New Jersey has vetoed in 8 years. And every one of those vetoes has been sustained. They've tried 52 times to override me, and they're 0 for 52. Well, what's that mean, and why is it important to you? That means that I've been able to unite our Republican Party in New Jersey, to stand up for those principles, not to splinter off, but to stand together when we believe in something.
We got about 4 more minutes. Then Samia is going to have a 1:35 stream. Be on the lookout for that.
And divided it is. We need a strong president who knows how to keep Republicans together. But lastly, I wake up every morning with a Democratic majority in both houses of the legislature, and I've woken up that way every day as governor. And that means I wake up every morning knowing I'm not going to get everything I want. And that
Samia is going to have more Planned Parenthood discussion.
I've now twice elected a conservative Republican governor and a liberal Democratic legislature. They're like the 13-year-old kid in the basement doing a science experiment, saying, let's mix these two things together and see what'll happen. The fact is that that's their choice. And as governor, it's not an option for me to stand in the corner and hold my breath and do nothing. It's my job to reach out and make it work, and that's why we've reformed teacher tenure with the Democratic legislature. We reformed the pension and benefit system with the Democratic legislature. We've capped our property taxes with the Democratic legislature. We've reduced the payroll by 15% with the Democratic legislature. That doesn't happen without knowing how to reach across the aisle and to work with the other side. Compromise, everybody, is not capitulation. They're two different words. And they're two different words for a reason. And so, yes, I've compromised where I thought it was necessary to compromise to make progress for the people in my state. And I have stood my ground and vetoed bad ideas when I thought that giving in would move our state backwards. It seems to me we need the same kind of approach in Washington, D.C. A president who's strong and tough, and people say lots of things about me, but they never say I'm misunderstood. And I won't be misunderstood in Washington, D.C. And I will bring people together. Our party to be united for a set of principles that we're going to move on and execute. And from day one to reach out to the other side to make sure they understand, that I understand, that the American people have made them an important part of governing, and that their voice needs to be heard as well. And we will work together to make sure that we move this country forward. So, I had a reporter ask me yesterday, how did I feel? Because her impression was that 4 years ago, these gentlemen were chasing me. And that 4 years later, I was chasing.
You've had some high-profile incidents in your administration in the last 4 years. Is there any?
We do appreciate everybody watching. Samia will be back in just about 5 minutes. Let us reset here. She's going to jump on, and she has a whole show for you this afternoon, hopefully. There will also be some breaking news, of course, that we will be covering to give you the best on Fox 10 News Now. It's been a blast, everybody. Hope you guys are having a great Tuesday. Samia is coming up next.